Hello everyone, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Holy Roman Empire line of succession. Now you guys spoke to me and asked because of the tremendous success of the French monarch line of succession that I posted a few weeks ago. It is one of my most viewed videos of all time. And so I took a poll on the channel, and you guys voted for the Holy Roman Empire to be the next line of succession video. And hey, if this one does well, I keep this series going. So, I'm going to be doing this the same way I did the English and the French monarch videos. If you haven't seen those, go check them out. I'm going to be starting with the first Holy Roman Emperor and going all the way to the present every single year. But we're also going to be showing who their heir was and their second heir as well. Pretty straightforward. We're just going through time here. Now, let me whip out my handy-dandy laser pointer. And I got my chicken sandwich here. Microwave chicken sandwich. We're going to get going. I got my wig here as an appropriate costume. Now, this time period we are looking at is the time period between 768 and 1922. Well, technically 2022, because we're going to go all the way from the first Holy Roman Emperor, which is Charlemagne, technically. Although Otto the Great was really the first Holy Roman Emperor in 962. The Holy Roman Empire did not exist yet in 768, but Charlemagne is generally considered to be the first Holy Roman Emperor. And we're also going to be tracing the line all the way to the modern day. And who would be the Holy Roman Emperor in 2022 had it still existed? As you see, it was abolished in 1922. So it was the Franks from 768 to 842, and then East Francia from 843 to 962. The Holy Roman Empire from 962 to 1806, and then the Austrian emperors from 1806 to 1922. So we're going to start with the Kingdom of the Franks, with Charlemagne, which lasts all the way to Louis I, and then East Francia. It was East Francia from 843 to 962, and then the Holy Roman Empire was formed from 962 to 1806. 1806, it eventually fell when Napoleon took it over, and then the House of Habsburg, which was ruling at the time, transitioned its power over to the Austrian Empire. So the emperors of Austria, last few emperors of Austria from 1806 to 1922. Without further ado, let's go! Alright, so we're getting started here with 768. Now, well, let me go grab this paper real quick. I wrote some notes down on the paper for these early part of the video because, oh yeah, by the way, strap in, this video might be a little bit long because I have to cover 1,300 years of history. So keep that in mind. Alright, so in the middle is Charlemagne. Now, Charlemagne is the great emperor. And if you've seen my French monarch video, this is just going to be a little bit of a repeat until we get to the split in the Franks. But I just decided to start here because Charlemagne really laid out the basics for what the Holy Roman Empire would become. Now, the Holy Roman Empire did not even exist in 768. It was simply the kingdom of the Franks, and Charlemagne was the king in 768. He succeeded his father Pepin the Short in 768 as king of the Franks. Now, he would later be crowned emperor in the year 800 by the Pope, and he was the first person to be crowned emperor since the fall of the Roman Empire in 476. So Charlemagne is a very important figure in the Holy Roman Empire and just medieval European history as a whole. His heir right now is his brother Carloman. He's known as Karl I. He is his first heir, his younger brother. And then his second heir would be after him, Bernard de Herstal, who was his uncle. Charlemagne's father, Pepin, had a brother who was still alive. His name is Bernard de Herstal. Now, this is all review, but just because. So we get to 771. This all holds true from 768, 769, 770, and 771. Because in 771, Charlemagne's heir, his brother Carloman I, passes away, leaving in 772. Bernard de Stael is now the heir, and then he has a son by the name of Saint Walla de Corbie, who is now second in line to the throne of the Franks at this point. So Charlemagne, his heir is his uncle and then his first cousin right now, because all of his brothers are dead. And he doesn't have any kids yet. He will eventually, though. Because in 773, Charlemagne has his first son and his heir. Now, something bad happens to him later down the line, but we'll show you. For now, he does live a while, though. This guy's name is Pepin Carolingian of Italy. He was born in 773. Now, if you've ever heard of the Lombards, he was kind of the founder of that society of the Lombards, England, and Italy at the time. I mean, during the late period of the first millennium. And then, obviously, de Herstal is now second in line after Pepin Carolingian, who is Charlemagne's eldest son. This all holds true until we get to 778. 778, Charlemagne has his second son by the name of Louis the Pious. Now, Louis the Pious is generally considered to be Louis I. He's Louis I of the Holy Roman Empire and France later down the line, because this is all French and German. The Franks was a kingdom that spread basically from France, Belgium, and the Netherlands all the way to all of the Germanic countries, such as like Romania and those types of areas, the Czech Republic and Austria and things. Basically all of Eastern Europe, through the French border all the way to like Russia today, would probably be part of the Franks. France was a big kingdom because after the fall of the Roman Empire, it kind of split in two. You had the Byzantine Empire in the east, and then in the west you had the Franks, the Kingdom of the Franks, which was what Charlemagne was king over. And so Louis the Pious was born in 778 as the second son of Charlemagne. Remember, he's after Pepin because he's got an older brother. I think it stays the same throughout the 700s, so we get to the 780s. In 800, though, Charlemagne is invited over by the Pope for Christmas, and he crowns him Emperor of the Franks. The first person to be crowned Emperor since the fall of Rome. The last person in Europe to hold the title of Emperor was the last Emperor of Rome. And once that happened in 476, this was like the first time in 300 or 400 years that an emperor had been crowned in Europe. So it's a pretty big deal that Charlemagne held there. But he still remained king. He was king of the Franks in 799, and now in 800 he's the emperor. So keep in mind, the emperor and kings are not the same thing. Well, they are the same thing. Well, they're both monarchs, but emperors generally, well, the way I look at it is kings rule over kingdoms, and then emperors rule over empires. And generally speaking, a kingdom is just one little area, and an empire is kind of like a group of kingdoms or a group of states, or just a really large amount of territory that has been united or conquered, or have fallen apart of something. But empires generally are bigger than kingdoms, and emperors generally have more power than a regular king would. So that's what that is. So this holds true until we get to 810. In 810, Charlemagne's beloved son, Pepin of Italy, the Lombard, he passed away in 810, which is not very good because Charlemagne was probably prepared to have him succeed him once he died. Charlemagne only dies a few years later in 814. Let me go grab my poster. I have the Useful Charts poster of the Holy Roman Empire Alright, so this shows all the Holy Roman Empires and how they're related to each other. But anyhow, so it's still the kingdom of the Franks at this point. Pepin dies in 810. So now once we get to 811, Charlemagne's senior heir now is his second son, Louis the Pious. Louis is now that. This guy over here is, I believe, Louis's son, a guy by the name of Lothair. Now, Lothair was the most senior grandson of Charlemagne and the son of Louis the First. So Charlemagne has Louis the First, and then Lothair. Lothair later becomes king of Middle Francia, which I'll talk to in a second. Charlemagne continues to kick until 814. In 814, he passes away after being on the throne for a good 46 years, which is pretty dang good for the 800s. 46-year reign is pretty good. You can never complain about that. So by the time we get to 815, Louis the Pious is now king. He's emperor. Actually, Louis was an emperor. He was not a king. He was the emperor of the Franks, the last emperor of the Franks, of all the Franks. He's known as Louis the First or Louis the Pious. Same guy. If you've ever heard Louis the Pious or Louis the First, it's the same guy. Now, the long line of Louis that France had, all the way up to Louis the 19th, he's the first Louis. It's Louis the First. So there are a lot of Louis in French history, and a good amount in the Holy Roman Empire as well. So Lothair, his eldest son, is now the heir, and then his second heir would be his second son named Louis the German. He's known as Louis the German, and you'll see why in a second. Now, the Germans probably called him Ludwig because Louis... the name Louis is very different among different types of languages. One of the fascinating things about names is, like, in different countries in Europe, they're pronounced differently. Like the name of Louis right here, in English would be Louis, in Spanish would be Luis, and then in French it's Louis, and then it's Ludwig in German, which is pretty cool because a lot of those languages, German, English, Spanish, and French, they are very similar to each other. So a lot of the names are different. Like you have like Henry in English, and then it's Henri in French. It's just little things like that. Or Francis in English and German, and then in Spanish it's Francisco, and then Francois in French. It's just kind of how names work. But anyway, Louis the First is king. I just call him Louis just because, that just is what it is. He continues to rule for the rest of the 810s, so we get to the 820s. He's still kicking. In 825, Lothair over here, his eldest son, has a son. He's known as, I believe this is his name Lothair? I think this might be Lothair the Second, but I need to check for sure. Because this guy would obviously be Lothair the First after a while. I have to fact check myself because I'm not 100% sure. And I want to give accurate information. But he has his son in 825 is when he was born. Now remember, the Franks are still united under Louis the First, and this Lothair is, at this point, 825, planning to take the throne once his father passes away. Now, let me see. Sorry if I'm yawning. It's pretty late that night. So this is Louis the Second. He becomes Louis the Second of Middle Francia, which you'll see in a second. These guys are kings of Middle Francia because I'll tell you here in a sec. But Louis the First continues his rule. Nothing happens in the 830s. So in 840 is when Louis the First dies. He had been on the throne for a good 26 years since his father Charlemagne had died back in 814. So in 840, Louis the First decides that the Frankish kingdom is pretty big, and he wants to split the kingdom into 3 separate parts. Well, it's initially 2, but it eventually becomes 3 in 843 with the Treaty of Verdun. But he decides to split his kingdom up to have a western portion and an eastern portion. There is the east version called East Francia, which will eventually turn into Middle Francia later down the line. This is my little kitty. So East Francia at the time is the eastern part, which mainly consists of Germany today. And then the western part, which is, my cat keeps jumping up here. The west part becomes West Francia, which eventually turns into France. So that's how you get France and Germany later down the line, or France and the Holy Roman Empire, because Germany didn't exist until like the 1800s, so it was just the Holy Roman Empire forever. But that was what it evolved into. East Francia eventually evolved into the Holy Roman Empire, and then West Francia evolved into France later down the line. So in 841, Lothair is technically ruling over the Holy Roman Empire territory, which again, it's not the Holy Roman Empire for another 120 years. It's East Francia right now. This guy here is second heir. This is Louis II. Obviously, Louis I was this guy here, so that's going to be Louis II of Middle Francia, which you'll see in a sec how Middle Francia comes into play. That guy is Lothair. No, this is Lothair II. Now, Lothair II was actually younger than Louis II, I think. But Lothair II, Lothair I right now is king right now. But in 843, they signed the Treaty of Verdun, which officially splits the Franks up. Now, Lothair was the senior line. So there's three branches. So the Franks were split into three parts, essentially, by 843. Now, it was only two until 843, but in 843 established it. So Louis I had three main sons. He split the kingdom amongst them. So there was the East Francia and West Francia, like I talked about earlier, but there was also a Middle Francia kingdom. The Middle Francia kingdom was in between the two, West and East Francia, of course, which makes sense. His senior branch, who consists of Lothair and Louis II, were given the Middle Francia title, and they actually became emperors, although the West Francia and East Francia were just kings. They were not emperors. Louis I gave his titles to the emperor to the Middle Francia because he saw that as the center of the Franks, Middle Francia. So he's like, my eldest son, Lothair, gets to be an emperor. And then his second son, Louis the German, becomes king of East Francia. And then he's got a third son named Charles the Bald, who becomes king of West Francia. So, but West Francia, Charles the Bald had actually started his reign in 840. It took Louis the German until 843 to actually get it. But Louis the German is known as Ludwig II in German. Now, since this is a Holy Roman Empire video, I'm going to be using the names of the emperors themselves by their German names, not by their English names, typically. So, Henry, for example, will be known as Heinrich. And then I'll call Louis Ludwig, and stuff like that. But I don't think it'll be consistent the whole way in, but I'm going to be calling them by their German names just because that's what they were known as. And I'm not, like, speaking German for the video. If you want to see me talking German, I'm sure there's subtitles somewhere, but this is an English-speaking video. But I am going to be calling the monarchs by their German names just because that's what they went by, and I feel like that's the most accurate. But anyway, Louis the German himself, Ludwig II, I'm going to call him Louis the German because that's just what we know him as. Because he was born with the name Louis. He was not Ludwig because he was French, of course, Franks. That's where France got its name from. He was Frankish when he was born. He was born all the way back in like the 820s. So anyway, his eldest son is a guy by the name of Karlemagne of Bavaria. Now, East Francia, too, is even split among different parts. So you have Bavaria, of course. There's Luxembourg, Swabia. I believe at this time, in the 840s, it was Saxony, Swabia, and Bavaria. So he had three sons in total. They all had a little kind of like dukedoms, honestly. But Karlemagne right here was the king of Bavaria at the time, and then his second son right here was Louis the Younger of Saxony, who becomes Ludwig III later on. He's king of Saxony. And then Louis the German's even got a third son named Charles, Karl, as we know him in French, or German. Charles the Fat, if you ever heard of him, he becomes the king of Swabia. So you have Swabia, Saxony, and Bavaria. It's all the same thing. They're all German kingdoms. And they all had their own kings even later on, after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire anyway. But Louis the German is king of that entire territory, the entirety of East Francia, although his eldest son was just king of Bavaria, and then his second son just king of Saxony, and then his third son was just king of Swabia, although Louis the German ruled over Swabia, Saxony, and Bavaria. Just wanted to keep that in mind. So nothing really goes on. Obviously, his eldest son, Karlmann, is his heir right now. And again, Louis the German is not the emperor. The emperor is the Middle Francia. Middle Francia eventually does die, though. They run out of heirs by 905. So the emperor titles will eventually go to East Francia later down the line. But as it stands right now, since Lothair is still reigning in Middle Francia, the title of emperor is going to stay in that branch of the family. So this all holds true until we get to let's see what it is. I think it's 876. So these guys stay the heirs. 876. So a lot of time has passed. Louis the German had been on the throne for a good amount of time by this point. And all right, guys, I'm back. I went upstairs to go do something real quick, and then I was going to come back down to record the rest of this. And my cat decided it'd be a good job to spill my water all over my computer. So my cat spilt water on my computer, and it just shut off. So I'm back. Sorry about that. That wasn't really much. You probably didn't see anything of it. But my cat spilled water on the computer. That's why I'm in a different setup. And that table over there was soaking wet, so I dried it off and stuff. But anyway, Louis the German dies in 876. Actually, a lot of Louis the First's sons made it to the 870s. I think Lothair died in 855, though, but Charles the Bald made it to like 877. So by the time we do get to 877, Karlmann of Bavaria is now king of East Francia. Now, I should mention that Karlmann has, his heir now is his brother, Louis the Younger, Ludwig III, later becomes Ludwig III, and then Charles the Fat over here. Now, I need to mention, Karlmann actually had a son at this point, but East Francia in the 800s did not follow primogeniture system. Now, for those of you that don't know what primogeniture is, it basically means that the firstborn son of a firstborn son will take precedence over all, like, uncles and stuff. So it would pass the throne by generation. What East Francia did was pass the throne from sibling to sibling. So Karlmann dies, his next brother gets it, and then his next brother gets it, and then his son gets it. So it's by sibling to sibling and not primogeniture. They didn't establish primogeniture until way late in the Holy Roman Empire, probably like 1400s, because the Holy Roman Empire was not a inheritance thing like most monarchies are. So this was not a primogeniture format. And it followed a semi-Salic law type thing, which a semi-Salic law means that it's got to be only males are allowed to inherit. Salic law is an old German thing. It means that only males are allowed to inherit. And Salic law means it has to be from a strict male-only line. However, semi-Salic law will allow a male from a female branch, but only one female. So it's really interesting. And you'll see that come into play later down the line. But Louis, this is Karlmann. He rules all the way until 879. He dies in 879, relatively young. So now the throne is succeeded by his son, who is, or not his son, his brother. His brother becomes Ludwig III, or Louis III, or whatever you want to call him. Obviously, the first Ludwig was Louis I, Louis the Pious, and then the second one was Louis the German, and Louis II.
So this is Ludwig III, and now his heir is Charles the Fat, his brother, and then his second heir is actually the son of Charlemagne right here, by the name of Arnulf. So that is who that is. He becomes Arnulf the First later down the line of East Francia. So Ludwig III dies in 882. He doesn't reign very long. He reigns for 3 years. And then Charles the Fat now becomes king. Now, this guy over here, I believe is... I don't really know who this guy is, but yeah, I think... Arnulf, I guess, has a... I don't know who this is, but I can probably figure it out. So this is Arnulf here. He's the heir of Charles the Fat. Charles the Fat doesn't have any kids. Charles the Fat actually ends up conquering West Francia. He ends up conquering West Francia. By this point, Lothair, the previous guy, Lothair, if we go way back, I hate going back, but Lothair, this guy here actually had 2 sons, and they both died with no sons. So his line actually died out in like 875. So by the time Charles the Fat's on the throne, he's the emperor. He's actually emperor now, I think. Yeah, he's the emperor. So he's the first person to be emperor since Middle Francia. He's the first East Francian king to be the emperor. Now, he actually ends up conquering West Francia, and he's the last person after Charlemagne to rule the entire Franks. But he does end up dying in 888. He does not have a long reign either. Him, Charlemagne, and Ludwig III. Typically, at this point, what the problem is with a non-primogeniture format that the East Francia was using, the kings are not going to reign long, especially afterwards. So Arnulf is now king in 889, and then his heir right now is this guy who eventually becomes... I guess this is... I'm going to be honest, I really don't know who this statue guy is over here. But they're out of heirs by this point. So Arnulf, his third heir, is a guy over in West Francia, who's part of the Carolingians. Now, Charles the Bald had his son named Louis II, becomes Louis II of West Francia. He's got 3 kids in total. His first 2 were Louis III and Carloman II. They both died. And then he had a third son named Charles. So this guy later becomes Charles III of West Francia. He is now the heir after that, because they've actually ran out of male heirs, so the throne would have passed through West Francia. But there are still 2 East Francian kings. There's one more after Arnulf, so that's kind of cool. Let's go back. We'll go over to, let me see, Ludwig II, Ludwig the German, and then it's going to be, well, it's going to be the son of Carloman, Arnulf. Actually, I think this is Zwintibold. This guy's name is Zwintibold Lotharingia. That's who that is. And then Charles III of West Francia is now not Charles III, the current king of Britain, but Charles III of West Francia. Now there. So now we're into the 890s. And in 892, or it was 893, Arnulf I. He's Arnulf I. I don't know if there were multiple Arnulfs in the Holy Roman Empire or not, but this is still East Francia. Arnulf I has another son, a second son, named Louis the Younger. He's known as Louis the Younger. Later down the line. You could call him Ludwig IV, I guess. But he didn't go as Ludwig IV because I believe there was another Ludwig IV later down the line. Yeah, he's just Ludwig the Child. Louis the Child, whatever you call him. He becomes king later down the line. So Arnulf I rules until 899. In 899, he dies, leaving the throne to this guy here in 900. He's got, let's see here. He's got this guy's name is Conrad the First. Conrad is related because there's a kind of a misconception line. It's kind of a sketchy one. But supposedly Louis the German had previously had a 4th child, or I guess he had a daughter, and then it's through her that we get Conrad the First. I guess it was her grandson or something like that. So that's how you get Conrad here. But Louis the Child is after this is that one guy. I forgot his name. It's a weird one. It is Zwinterbold. So he dies in 900 anyway. He's born in 870. So now Louis the Child is now on the throne. And I guess you'd call him Ludwig. Now we get to 901, so we're into the 900s now. So Ludwig the Child is on the throne with Conrad being his heir, and then Charles III of West Francia is the second heir. So he makes it all the way up to 911. So he does rule for a good 11 years. Dies in 911. Again, the year, not 911, not 911 AD, not the terrorist attack 911. The year 911 is when he dies, leaving the throne to Conrad. So now Conrad, as of 912, is going to be the king of, I guess he's emperor. I don't know. I think he's just king. We didn't have an emperor until, well, Arnulf was emperor. Charles the Bald became emperor later down the line, but there is no emperor right now. Because emperors, basically, king is the title you get right after your previous monarch dies. They get the emperor, the king title, but the emperor isn't given until there's a ceremony, which sometimes is held years later. So Conrad the First, he's King Conrad the First. He doesn't have a really strong claim to the throne anyway, but he's the last male line guy that East Francia has before their line transfers to West Francia. And in West Francia, there's a problem with Carolingians because Charles III is the only option because he's got no kids and no brothers or anything. So after this is actually a dead empire. Now, what I mean by this is obviously they can just elect a new person to be king, but essentially the line of succession will die after Charles III if something happens. But this all holds true until we get to 918. Because in 918, Conrad I dies. So you're like, you know what? I guess the Franks are going to be united again under Charles III. I guess he's going to become king of East Francia as well. But they decide they do not. The nobles in East Francia do not want to unite the Franks again. Because that had previously been united under Charles the Fat. And then before that, even Louis the Pious. Louis I way back when. But they decide they do not want to unite the Franks again. So what happens is Conrad I, after he dies, they elect a new guy who was actually a descendant of Charlemagne through a female branch. You see Louis I had a daughter named Gisela who married Saint Eberhard, the Duke of Friuli. And then they had a daughter named Ingiltrude, who then in turn had a daughter named Hedwiga of Babenberg, who married Otto I, the Duke of Saxony. And then we get their son right here, who becomes Heinrich the Fowler, or Henry the Fowler, as we know him now, and in English, mainly Henry the Fowler. So they elect Henry the Fowler, Henry the Fowler. They elect him to be the king of East Francia. So he does. And that's in 919. So he is actually a great-great-grandson of Louis I. So he is actually a descendant of Charlemagne, and he's in line. He's just through a female branch. Now, this is where the system of primogeniture actually starts. Henry the Fowler establishes the primogeniture system and not the sibling-to-sibling rule because that was really stupid, and that probably shouldn't be how monarchies run. His heir is currently a guy, his son named Otto, who will eventually become Otto the Great. Otto the Great becomes the first Holy Roman Emperor. The Holy Roman Empire is formed about 50 years after this, about 40-something years after this. And then Charles III is actually still the heir after Otto, because Henry the Fowler's only got one son by 919. I think Otto the Great was born in 912 or something. But yeah, Charles III is not going to end up inheriting the East Frankian throne. So in 920, Henry the Fowler has another son in 920. His name is Heinrich I von Bayern. Heinrich I of von Bayern. He does not become king, but he is second in line to the throne in 920. This all holds true until we get to 930. In 930, Otto the Great over here has a son by the name of Ludolf von Schwaben. So he is now the second heir after Henry the Fowler. So this is Henry the Fowler's grandson, Ludolf von Schwaben, after Otto the Great. Now, he's not known as Otto the Great at this point, but he's just Otto. And then actually, Henry the Fowler makes it all the way to 936. That's when he dies. He's actually on his way, I think, to be crowned emperor, because they were going to crown him emperor because they hadn't had an emperor for a while. He was just king of East Francia. I mean, Henry the Fowler was just king of East Francia, which a lot of people don't know, but he was just king of East Francia. That's why we're following the East Francia side, because it turned into the Holy Roman Empire. I think I already established that, though. But he was, I think, on his way to come to Rome, which is in Italy, to be crowned emperor, but he died before he could make it there. So therefore, they crowned his son, Otto the Great, as emperor instead. So I think he rules as king of East Francia for a little bit until he's crowned emperor of the Romans. Emperor of the Romans. That's what they called him. Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Emperors is kind of a later thing we've given on them. And I'm not going to go into the fact that the Holy Roman Empire was not holy nor Roman nor an empire. It was more like it should have just been called the German or the European German kingdom instead of the Holy Roman Empire, but you get the idea. So this is Otto the Great. He's got his two sons here. No. Otto the Great's got Leodolf von Schwaben, and this is Otto the Great's brother over here. Again, his name's Heinrich I von Bayern. Now, the reason this guy isn't Heinrich I is because Heinrich right here did not become... Heinrich, by the way, is Henry in German. He didn't become king of East Francia. Otto the Great was the last king of East Francia as well, and the first king of the... He was the first Holy Roman Emperor and the last king of East Francia. This all holds true until we get to 955, I think. 955, Otto the Great has a second son named Otto as well. He named him Otto. And this all holds true until we get to 957, because in 957, Leodolf von Schwaben actually dies. So now the throne of East Francia would pass from Otto the Great to his son here. And then this guy over here is a guy by the name of Heinrich II von Bayern. And this guy is actually the son of Heinrich I back here. So this guy actually had a son. So this is the nephew of Otto the Great right there. Otto the Great's nephew, and then this guy is his son. This guy later becomes Otto II, because Otto the Great's Otto the First, but he later becomes Otto II. Now, in 962 is officially when the Holy Roman Empire is founded. That is when they crown Otto the Great Emperor of the Romans. That's the title he used back in the 900s. 962. That's the title he used, was Emperor of the Romans, and it's probably the title all of the Holy Roman Empires used. Now, the Holy Roman Empire was not an automatic title. You see, they would be king of the Holy Roman Empire until the ceremony was held that crowned them emperor. They did not become emperor upon the father's death, for example, or whoever the person was before. They did not become emperor automatically. Emperor was a ceremonial title that was given after the ceremony. So they were just kings before. But I will let you know which ones were kings and which ones were emperor, Holy Roman Emperor. Otto the Great obviously was an emperor. He was the first Holy Roman Emperor. And then his son, Otto II, does become as well. Otto the Great makes it all the way to 973. So he makes it about 11 years, starting the Holy Roman Empire. That's when they first abolished East Francia. I think West Francia is still called that until like probably the 1100s. It was a long time. Probably about 200 years after East Francia became the Holy Roman Empire. Now, I'm not sure what they called the Holy Roman Empire back then, but we just know it today is the Holy Roman Empire. I don't really know when that term really came up. They probably just thought it was the Roman Empire. Otto the Great back then probably thought it was just the Roman Empire was back, and he was the king of emperor of the Romans. That's probably just what he thought, but in reality, that's not what it was, because you had the Byzantine Empire and things like that. But anyhow, Otto the Great does die in 973. So once we get to 974, Otto II is now king, and Otto II is relatively young. He's only about 19 years old when he becomes emperor after his father dies. Now, Otto II does become Holy Roman Emperor. Good to know that. And then Heinrich II of von Bayern is his heir. And then he's got a second heir over here. This guy will eventually become Heinrich I. Or no, Heinrich II of Holy Roman Emperor. He'll actually become Holy Roman Emperor himself. He's the younger brother of Heinrich II over here. No, he's his son, actually. This guy has a son. That is his son. So Otto II and Heinrich II von Bayern, not Heinrich II, Holy Roman Emperor. He was the first cousin of Otto II, and then this guy would be the first cousin once removed of Otto II. Now, Otto II rules not a very long time. I only believe he's only king for like 9 years or something. Yeah, he's only king for like 10 years. So in 980, though, he does have a son named Otto. He names him Otto, and then he will eventually become Otto III. So, I think he was born 955. 955, I think, was when Otto II was born. But he has his, and again, these portraits of the Holy Roman Emperors were not very good because the German technology, Germany wasn't, the Holy Roman Empire wasn't a very artistic region like France and stuff were in England and stuff like that. So the second heir now is this guy. He's dropped, and then Otto right here. That happens in 980. But in 983, Otto II dies. He's only 28 years old, and he dies, leaving his 3-year-old son as king. So Otto III is made Holy Roman Emperor. So he does become Holy Roman Emperor. Typically, if they're holding up this picture was this portrait was painted and drawn in during the ceremony, probably. So Heinrich II von Bayern is still his heir. He would be the first cousin once removed of Otto III, and then this is his second cousin over here, Otto III. So Otto III does last pretty long. He never has any sons, though, because he dies when he's 22. So this takes us through the end of this. But in 995, I forgot to mention that in 995, after Otto III's, he takes the throne when he's 3. So by 995, he's 12. He dies when he's 22. No, he's 15. He's 15 in 995. Not my bad. He's been on the throne for 12 years. He's 15. But this guy here, Heinrich II, he dies in 995. So now his son Heinrich as well. I guess he's Heinrich III right now of von Bayern. He is the heir of Otto III if he doesn't have any kids, which he doesn't. And then this guy over here would be. Okay, now I have to look because I don't know for sure. Let's see. So it says Otto. I'll pull him up. Otto the Great was born in 912, dies in 973, I believe. But yeah, this guy here is now the heir to Otto the Third. Otto the Third, of course, was a pretty cool guy. I'm a big fan of Otto the Third. I think he was pretty cool. Alrighty. I'll find it. I want to say this is Otto of Worms right here, but I could be wrong. I think that's Otto the First of Worms. Now, the reason he's related is because of the semi-Salic law. Now, semi-Salic law makes it so that, of course, it's got to be only males that inherit because Salic law means only males can inherit from a strict male-only line, but it's semi-Salic, which means that actually a male can inherit. Any male can inherit, but it's okay if it's from a female branch. Males are allowed to inherit from a female branch, but the female themselves is not allowed to inherit. So you can skip a gen. So, like, if I'm the king and I have like 2 sons and they both die without kids, but I have a daughter who has a son, that's okay. Then my throne would pass down to him. But it would skip my daughter, just go straight to my grandson. That's how it would be. That's how semi-Salic law works. Instead of going up another generation. And that was what screwed over France during the 100 Years' War. Because the 100 Years' War would have never happened had France actually used semi-Salic law instead of just Salic law. or agnatic primogeniture. It's the same thing. And I also should mention, too, that the Holy Roman Empire was not an inheritance until probably about the 1400s. The Holy Roman Empire was actually an elected position, but it just happened more often than not that the son of the previous monarch became elected the emperor. So when Otto II died, they had to elect his son to be the next emperor, which they did. So that's why he became that, but it didn't necessarily always have to be that way. Just wanted to let you guys know that the Holy Roman Empire was an elected position. So you'll see the throne switch back from house to house. The nobles would elect a new emperor every time the one died. But if the dynasty had a stronghold on power, and the nobles were happy with the emperor, typically it stayed within the family. But if the emperor did not have a stronghold on power, or was really young, or the succession was murky, they probably would have elected somebody from a different house. Which I'll let you know when that happens. So this is Otto of Worms right here. So he's going to take us into the year 1000. Otto III will, and then he passes away in 1002. So he barely made it through, but anyhow, that's how that is. So the next emperor is actually his senior heir, who becomes Heinrich II. Obviously Heinrich II, because if you remember way back when, Henry the Fowler, way back here, is considered Henry I or Heinrich I. Heinrich in German, of course. So by the time we get to 1003, when Heinrich II becomes king. Now he is actually made Holy Roman Emperor, so he does serve as a Holy Roman Emperor. Heinrich II does become Holy Roman Emperor. Now he reigns for a little bit. Otto of Worms is right here as his heir, and then there's the second heir, who is, I believe, his son, who is the guy named Conrad I of Carinthia, I think is who this is. Is that Conrad II? That's Conrad I. Well, let's see. Otto of Worms, Henry of Speyer. So I guess it's going to be Heinrich of Speyer. This is Heinrich of Speyer right here. He was born in 970. No. Heinrich of Speyer is dead. Who is this then? Because that's not Conrad II, is it? That could be Conrad II. I guess we'll find out. But this is Otto of Worms. I think Otto of Worms actually outlived his son. But we'll see what happens. So, again, 1003, we get in here. Otto of Worms dies in 1004. So then we move on to the heir now is this guy, whoever this is. And then this over here, I think, is Conrad II. So I guess this is actually Heinrich of Speyer, but it says right here that he died in 990, so I don't know why he's still kicking. But this says he died in 1011. He died in 1011. No, that was actually, no. This was Conrad I of Carinthia right here. It was the eldest son of Otto of Worms. So he is there. But his brother, Conrad, is dead. But this is his brother's son. This is his nephew over here. And this is a way different, distant relative from Heinrich II. But it still is a succession line. It's still his heir because Heinrich II doesn't have any kids and he doesn't ever have kids. So by the time we're in like here, 1007, that's just how that is. So he actually ends up dying, Heinrich of Speyer ends up dying in 1011. That's when he dies. So now the empire will die with them after Heinrich II. He's only got one possible heir left, Conrad. This stays the same actually until 1016, because in 1016 Conrad here actually has a son named Heinrich, so he will eventually become the emperor as well. I believe emperor. We'll find out, I guess. Yes, he will become Holy Roman Emperor. So Heinrich II is still on the throne for another 8 years. Nothing happens. Now we're in the 1020s. So in 1024 is actually when Heinrich II dies. Now Heinrich II had been on the throne for a good 22 years by this point. And of course, that's just how that is. So in 1025, we get Conrad II. Obviously, because he had Conrad I way back. Conrad I was king of East Francia. I mean, it carries over even from East Francia because they knew it was really the same, because East Francia and the Holy Roman Empire were very similar. So Conrad II does become Holy Roman Emperor, and then his son is right here. He will eventually become Heinrich III. So we have Conrad II and then Heinrich III here. We're still a dead empire afterwards, though. Conrad II rules until 1039 when he dies. These guys are all from the house of, I guess they're the Ottonians at this point, but they might be something else. This might have passed to a different house. I guess it's now the House of Worms, maybe. They're the Salians, actually, which is the old. So now we're in the Salian dynasty. The Salian dynasty was created by Otto Worm way back. The last Carolingian or last Ottonian was Heinrich II. Heinrich II, he was an Ottonian, which was the same dynasty that Henry the Fowler and Otto the Great were from. But Conrad II is part of the Salians. But he dies in 1039. Like I said, and then his son becomes Heinrich III. Now, after Heinrich III, though, there's a problem because in 1040 right now where we're at, there's a dead empire. He's got no heir possible. So we're going to be in a succession crisis if Heinrich III were to die unexpectedly. But anyway, Heinrich III does become Holy Roman Emperor as well as his son. And now he does have a... Move that over. In 1050, he does have a son. Now, this guy will eventually become Heinrich IV. Right down the line, and he's a pretty famous emperor. I believe he's the one who. No, that's not true. Is he the one that married Empress Matilda? I could be wrong. I think he might. No, he's not. Heinrich IV, anyway, right here in 1050s when he was born. That holds true. In 1056, Heinrich III does die. So now Heinrich IV is on the throne. Heinrich III only had one son, which was Heinrich IV. So by the time we get to 1057, Heinrich IV is the only possible monarch available, and he's 7 years old, and he becomes Holy Roman Emperor, and there's a dead empire after he dies. But the Salians had a very strong hold on power, so the nobles elected their eldest son always during the Salian period. So that there's no need to worry about the succession being weird for the Salians until we get after Heinrich VI, I think. But this is Heinrich IV right now. He rules all the way up until, I think, let's see here, 1105. Wow, he's on throne for a long time. He's on throne for a good 49 years. That is a long reign. Heinrich IV had a very long reign. So he doesn't have a son until 1074. In 1074, he has his son. Now, I don't know if this guy became king after him. So I'll have to check that right now. No, again, these guys have daughters and stuff, but daughters can't inherit in the Holy Roman Empire. So this guy becomes Conrad II of Italy. Now, he does not. Heinrich IV outlives Conrad II of Italy right here. Now he becomes king of Italy, which is pretty cool. This holds true until 1080. I guess it's 1088. Yeah, 1088. 1088, Heinrich IV has a second son named Heinrich V. He will eventually become Heinrich V. So that's how that is. So he makes it all the way to, now we're into the 1100s. 1101, King of Italy over here dies. Conrad II of Italy dies. So now the heir is Heinrich V. It's Heinrich IV's second son. Now, again, he also has, this would be, who is this guy here? I'm going to say this is Hedwig Eliac of Swabia, who is, you see, the semi-Salic law type thing, the format, meaning that a son can still inherit if it's part of a female line. This guy was part of the female line. See, Heinrich IV had two sons. The first one was the King of Italy, Conrad, and then Heinrich V, Holy Roman Emperor. And then he had a daughter named Agnes, and this is Agnes's son right here. He was born in 1088 as well. So by the time Heinrich IV does die in 1105, that is when he dies. Heinrich V. Oh, this is wrong dates. Oh, he did not die in 1106. I think it was 1105. Somebody got that wrong. I think he actually died in 1105, not 1106, but I could be wrong on that. So now Heinrich V is now ruling in 1107. So his heir is his nephew, who is, I guess, like the same guy I said earlier. And then this guy. Oh, I'm so freaking yawning. Becomes Conrad the third. Go down line. Now, actually, no, this is Frederick the Second, the Duke of Swabia. That's who this is. Heinrich V. Heinrich V, I think the Salians die with him. Yeah, the Salians die with Heinrich V. So then these guys are actually Agnes, his sister. Heinrich V's sister Agnes actually married Frederick I, the Duke of Swabia. So now we're into the house of Hohenstaufen. That's what the house of Hohenstaufen. That was the house of Frederick here and Conrad. Okay. So this guy ends up ruling all the way into 1125. So nothing happens until we get there. Well, actually, it does because this guy over here, Frederick, does have a son by the name of Frederick as well. This guy later become Frederick Barbarossa. He was born in 1122. Frederick Barbarossa is one of the more well-known Holy Roman Emperors because he expanded the realms of the Holy Roman Empire and basically pretty much reached its peak during the reign of Frederick Barbarossa. It was a very powerful dynasty. But Heinrich V is still king 1122, and then he doesn't die until 1125. That's when Heinrich V dies. And I should mention, too, that Heinrich V was the Holy Roman Emperor that married Matilda. Now, Matilda was the daughter of Henry I of England. And then they eventually, after he died, she went on to marry Geoffrey Plantagenet. And then it was with her that became the House of Plantagenet in England, which was a pretty important house over there. But Heinrich V did marry her, which I think is pretty cool. They didn't have any kids, though. So that's how that is. So, by the time we get to 1126, what the heck just happened? The Hohenstaufens don't take the throne just yet because they try to keep the Salians on the throne because they don't want the house to transfer, because when the house transfers, the nobles from the certain house lose power. So they elect a king from the Salian dynasty. Now, this is like a really distant cousin of Heinrich V. His name is Lothair II. He became Lothair II. The first Lothair, I guess they're counting Lothair. I ruled for like 2 years. That Lothair, the eldest son of Louis I, way back then, back in like the 800s, I guess, counting Lothair. But this is Lothair II, and he's actually a Salian. The relationship between him and Heinrich V is kind of murky. It's like 1 a.m. right now, guys. Just want to let you know that. So if I sound tired, it's what it is. So yeah, he's actually Conrad II. We'll go back to, where's he at? Conrad II, who's this guy here. He had a second wife named Gisela of Swabia, who married Brun I, the Count of Brunswick, and it was their grandson or great-grandson who becomes, I guess it's a great-grandson, who becomes Lothair II. But after Lothair II dies, the Salian dynasty comes to an end, and then it merges into the House of Welf later down the line. But he ends up dying in 1137. He rules for a little bit, but this guy here is actually the son of Lothair II. But since the senior branch still exists, the House of Hohenstaufen down here, this is still the senior branch. Frederick is currently the second heir, but Lothair the second does have a son, I guess, at 1129, so I'll pull him up. 2011-37, I am pulled up because it's kind of interesting how this stuff works. So Lothair, this is Gertrude, I guess. Gertrude, no, it ain't Gertrude, I don't really know. No, this is Henry the Lion of Saxony. He is the grandson of Lothair II. Lothair II had a daughter by the name of Gertrude, who was born back in 1115, and she was 14 years old when she had this guy. This is Henry of Saxony. He's known as Henry the Lion, if you've ever heard of him. He was born in 1129. So Henry the Lion was actually, he's an old Holy Roman Empire warrior. Now, he was actually in the line of succession in the heir to Lothair II, which is pretty interesting. So that all holds true until 1137. In 1137, though, the Salian house does die because his daughter marries into the Welfs. She marries, his daughter Gertrude marries Henry X, the Duke of Bavaria. And it is this guy here, Henry the Lion, who is actually Henry XII of Bavaria. Henry XII, there have been a lot of Henrys, Heinrich, whatever. His father was Henry X, and I don't know who Henry XI was, but I guess he was Henry XII of Bavaria. But in 1138, they bring back this guy, and the House of Hohenstaufen is officially on the throne. But this guy here, Frederick, had actually died previously at some point. I don't know what year it was exactly, but sometime during the reign of Lothair II, he died. Now, I guess we could see, but no, he didn't. He did not die. The nobles, after Lothair II died, elected Conrad, his younger brother, in 1138 to become Conrad III. So he becomes Conrad III. And I am going to mention, too, that Lothair II was all Holy Roman Emperors. They were all Holy Roman Emperors. But Conrad III is not Holy Roman Emperor. He's just the king. Because he only was king. Well, he was king for 14 years, but Conrad III right here. And then he's got this is his older brother, Frederick, and then his nephew, Frederick Barbarossa. Conrad III himself never has any kids. So this holds true until we get to 1147. 1147, Frederick dies. So that sucks to be Frederick because he almost became king, but like a few times, but that's how it is. But the House of Hohenstaufen continues to live on. So Frederick Barbarossa now is Conrad III's heir, which is his nephew. This guy down here is Heinrich Jasemgott, who is like a very distant relative. Because they're kind of out at this point. Because I don't think I'm gonna look it up. 1122 to 11, whatever. That is not what he does, I guess. I know he's born 1122 though. No, not Cenotaph. Okay. So Frederick Barbarossa, Frederick II of Swabia. I guess they have I don't know. Do they have a sister? Possibly. I don't really know. But we have to go back to the old Swabian kings. But we have to go in that one line. Trying to figure out who this is. He was dead by this point, so he's got. I'm not sure who this guy is here, but he's the second heir after Frederick Barbarossa. He's not important. In 1151, who is this guy? Now that is Frederick Barbarossa's eldest son. He has a son in that year. Let me see. We get Friedrich. Let's say we're known as Friedrich in Germany. I just call him Frederick right now. This is Who is that? I think he becomes emperor. Wow, I'm tired. Okay. Don't know who this is either. It is so difficult to figure out these successions. So, Conrad III dies in 1152, now leaving Frederick Barbarossa is now king. Now, he's going to end up ruling for probably about 37 years. He's king for a long time. He's emperor for a long time. He actually is Holy Roman Emperor. Conrad III was just king. Now, Frederick Barbarossa, the title of Holy Roman Emperor has finally shifted into the Hohenstaufen family. These guys might be part of the House of Welf, actually. I don't think this is the son of Frederick Barbarossa. And then we get this guy over here. I guess he died, and then his son. Right there. Frederick Barbarossa has his son in 1164. That's when he has his eldest son, named Friedrich V of Swabia. And in 1165 has a second son. He will become Heinrich VI. Right down the line. Heinrich VI, I think, does become Holy Roman Emperor. Yes, he does. After Frederick Barbarossa dies. But Frederick Barbarossa still got a good 25 years in him still. So by the time we get to the 1160s, wherever, in 1170, his son dies. And remember, he was only born in 1164. Friedrich. This isn't Friedrich. Who is this? I forgot his name. No, I think it's Heinrich of Swabia. No, it's Friedrich V of Swabia. He dies when he's like 6 years old. He looks way older than 6 in that portrait, though, but that is what that is. So he dies in 1170. So now his eldest son, his second son, Heinrich VI, is now the heir to Frederick Barbarossa, which is pretty interesting. So this guy would be the third son of Frederick Barbarossa. Frederick Barbarossa had a lot of kids in total. This guy, I'm going to do. All right, so after the death of, let me whip out my pointer again. I went to, after the death of Frederick V of Swabia, Frederick Barbarossa's second son, who will later become Heinrich VI, is now the heir in 1171. The second heir would be Frederick Barbarossa's third son, who is Otto von Hohenstaufen. They're all part of the House of Hohenstaufen. Frederick Barbarossa is part of the House of Hohenstaufen, as I talked about earlier. Now, Frederick Barbarossa had like 5 sons in total, which is really good for succession purposes. So this all holds true until we get to about 11. Let's see here. It's going to be 1190. In 1190, Frederick Barbarossa dies after being on the throne for a good almost 40 years. He'd been on the throne since 11. I don't really remember what year it was exactly. It was 1137, I think. So he'd been on there for a little bit. No, it was 1152. It was 1152. But 1190, he dies, leaving the throne to his eldest surviving son, Heinrich VI. Heinrich VI is now emperor. I believe he does become Holy Roman Emperor. And then currently his heir is his brother Otto von Hohenstaufen. And then I believe he's got another brother. This is Conrad von Hohenstaufen, who is the fourth son of Frederick Barbarossa. Continuing on, in 1194, Heinrich VI has his son, who will later become Friedrich II, because Frederick Barbarossa is Friedrich I. He will later become Friedrich II. Went on right now in 1194. So that bumps Otto von Hohenstaufen down to second in line. But Heinrich VI doesn't have any more kids, I don't think. So this all holds true until we get to 1198. 1197, Heinrich VI dies. He'd only been on the throne for 7 years, but he does end up dying in 1197. So the king is not going to pass primogeniture. Remember, how the monarchy was an elected position. Now, they still elected a member from the House of Hohenstaufen, but they bypassed up his son because if you remember, his son, Friedrich, was born in 1194. He was only 3 years old, so the chances of them electing a 3-year-old son are pretty low. They bypass his brother Otto and bring in Philip. Now, how do you pronounce Philip in German? Let's look that up because I don't know. There weren't many Philips, but I just want to see. I don't know if it might just be Philip, but let me find a translate. I got my translator somewhere in here. Here it is. We do German. Philip spelled with 2 P's. It's going to be Philip. It's just Philip. So Philip right here is the 5th son of Frederick Barbarossa. So his 5 sons were, his eldest son was Friedrich right here, Friedrich V of Swabia. Second son was Heinrich VI, and then Otto von Hohenstaufen, and then it was this guy here, which I forgot his name. It was, oh crap, Conrad, and then Philip was his 5th son. Conrad died in 1196, so they didn't show him on there. And then once Heinrich VI died in 1197, they bypass Otto in favor of Frederick Barbarossa's 5th son, who becomes Philip. But don't know if he becomes Holy Roman Emperor. He does not become Holy Roman Emperor in 1198 when he takes the throne. He becomes, simply if they weren't Holy Roman Emperor, they were kind of just the King of Germany. So he becomes King of Germany. Not Holy Roman Emperor, but he's still in the same line. He is part of the House of Hohenstaufen, so he becomes king in 1198. So he brings us into 1200. In 1200, actually, the year 1200, Otto von Hohenstaufen dies. So now the throne is set to pass after Philip, because Philip's got no kids. By 1201, we have the son, still the son of Heinrich VI, who at this point is about 7 years old. And then there's this guy here. This guy is a more off branch from, I believe, a female line, but I could be wrong. Frederick Barbarossa had a sister named Judith, and I guess this is her son. Well, maybe not. Let's see. Could this be Herman of Thuringia? I think this is a possibility. This is Herman Thuringia. No, I believe this is actually Ludwig IV of Thuringia. He was actually born in 1200, so he was pretty young at this point. I think his dad, Herman, was dead. He was still alive. He died in 1217. This is either Herman I of Thuringia or Ludwig IV. I don't know for sure. But anyhow, in 1201, or 1202, this guy, Philip, the king of Germany. There were no other Philips in the Holy Roman Empire, so he's just Philip of Swabia. But Philip here, King Philip, has a son. I don't think he lives long, though. But let me just make sure. So Judith, it's a half-sister of Frederick Barbarossa. So Frederick Barbarossa's line's dying off here. Philip von Schwaben. That's who this guy is, Philip von Schwaben. So he has a son named Kunigund of Hohenstaufen, von Hohenstaufen, who's this guy right here. He was born in 1202. He actually does live to be 46 years old. So we actually don't have a portrait of him, but this is just his burial site. He's buried in the Annecy Cloister in Prague, the Czech Republic currently. But that was obviously part of the Holy Roman Empire back then. So he was born in 1202. This all holds true until we get to 1208, because in 1208, Philip, I believe, does he die in 1208? Yes, he does. Philip von Schwaben dies on June 21st of 1208. So that leaves the throne, you'd think, to his son. But no, because the Holy Roman Empire, again, is an elected position, and Philip only served as king. He was not emperor. So, after him, we actually get a member from the House of Welf is elected, because they really don't want this guy, even though, again, Friedrich over here, he's only 14 in 1208. So they don't want to elect a 14-year-old to the emperor. He probably will become emperor later down the line, though, but after him, they elect a member from the House of Welf. So that's why the house changes here. So we're now at the House of Welf. This guy here is Holy Roman Emperor Otto IV. And yes, he does become Holy Roman Emperor. He's part of the House of Welf, and this starts the conflict between the House of Hohenstaufen and the House of Welf. There was kind of a civil war in the Holy Roman Empire for power between the two houses, the Welfs and Hohenstaufen. So you'll see the throne pass repeatedly back and forth between the Welfs and Hohenstaufens. I'll let you know which house is ruling. So that's why we have the Hohenstaufens here, which the Hohenstaufens are kind of dying off because Frederick Barbarossa is kind of running out of descendants. This is really it for the House of Hohenstaufen, just these three guys. So by the time we get to 1209, when the House of Welf's on the throne, the House of Welf had previously been on Henry the Lion way back. If you remember Lothair II, which I'll go back to him here. You guys remember he was before Frederick Barbarossa, and then this guy was. This is Frederick the. That's who is this? I forgot who that guy was. That's Conrad III. So if we go all the way back, I believe before Conrad I, this is Lothair II. He was actually part of the House of Welf, kind of. I mean, his son was Henry the Lion. So yeah, this is Henry the Lion. He was part of the House of Welf, I think. Well, yeah, Henry the 12th was, because Lothair II, yeah, this is his grandson. His daughter married Henry the 10th, the Duke of Bavaria, who was part of the House of Welf. So therefore, Henry the 12th, Henry the 12th of Bavaria, right here, is part of the House of Welf. And his son, his eldest son was Henry V, the Count of Palatine and Rhine, and his second son was Otto IV. So Otto IV, the Holy Roman Emperor, was the second son of Henry the 12th here, Henry the Lion. Now, Henry the Lion never became Holy Roman Emperor himself, but his second son is who we're at now in 1209 with this guy here, Otto IV. Otto IV, obviously the first Otto was Otto the Great, and then the second Otto the Third. So Otto IV, he is the second son of Henry the Lion. So I just want to let you guys know that. This gentleman here, this very nice looking man, is going to be, let me see, when does he die? It was Otto the Fourth dies. Well, maybe he got deposed. Let me make sure for sure. I guess he did get deposed. Lothair II dies in what year? 1137. Okay. I think he actually ruled to his death, though. Okay. All right. So once we go and get Henry the Saxony line, his second son, Henry V of Brunswick. So Otto IV was actually the second son of Henry the Lion, as talked about. This is Henry the Lion's eldest son, who is Henry V of Brunswick. He was actually born in 1173. And then Otto IV himself was born in 1177, so he was a little bit older. But he is Holy Roman Emperor. And then this guy is the third son of Henry the Lion by the name of Wilhelm von Luneburg. He was born in 1184, but he dies in 1213. So once we do get to 1213, this guy here, Wilhelm von Luneburg. So this is the House of Welf. He dies. So now the next in line would be after Henry V. We would get this guy here. Now let's see if Henry V has any kids himself, as he might. Yes, I believe this is Heinrich II von Sachsen, but he also died in 1214, I think. No, that's not him. Who is this? Okay, I don't know who this is, but some child. So by the time I get to 1215, that is when I believe Otto IV, I think he was deposed, which means he got the throne taken over by the Hohenstaufen. So I think the Hohenstaufens are back. Yes. He got his throne taken over by none other than Friedrich II. So now the House of Hohenstaufen is back. They take over the House of Welf. So he's on the throne from Otto IV rules as Holy Roman Emperor from 1208 to 1215. So by the time I get to 1216, Friedrich II is now king. Now Friedrich II obviously is the second because Frederick Barbarossa was Friedrich I. Now this guy here, again, I'm not too sure on who this is. And then if I knew who this is, I'd probably know who this is too. These are from some female branch. Let me see if I can figure it out. Let me see here. Born in 1194. I got to go back to Friedrich II. So he was a Hohenstaufen. I think he was the last Hohenstaufen king. Yes, he was, before it transfers to the other houses. There's going to be 3 more houses that come into play after this. So that he was the last member of the House of Hohenstaufen, because Hohenstaufen's dead. The Hohenstaufen line's going to die with him unless he has any kids. Which he does. He does have kids. It's just none of them inherit the throne. I think he has 1 son. So if we go through his line, we get Heinrich VI. Let's see. Let's go to Frederick Barbarossa. Let's see. No, that's. See something else. Auto. Okay. I really don't know who these 2 individuals are here, but they're part of some female branch. So by the time I get to 1218, I think that when Friedrich II has his son. Let me see. I don't think so. No, not Otto. He's his son, Heinrich. So yeah, he doesn't have a son. I don't know who this is. I think there was some senior guy that was probably born in 1218, but they're not important. So this guy over here is actually King Alfonso X of Spain. I'm not sure how he comes into play. I'll figure it out here. Let me just look him up. He was born in 1221. Alfonso X of Castile. Alfonso the Wise. So his mother was Beatrix of Swabia. Oh, I guess he was the daughter of Philip, the previous King Philip. This guy here, he actually had some daughters who had their lines passed in. Now, I don't know why this guy was kicked out. Somehow this guy was kicked out of the line of succession, so I don't know. But 1221 is when he was born. Now, Philip of Swabia's Beatrix, she married. Philip had a daughter that married King Alfonso. No, who did he marry? Fernando III. Fernando III of Castile. So this is his son. Now he's not the heir, of course, because he's a spouse. But Alfonso X is actually second in line to the Holy Roman Empire. Although because it's an elected position, he probably won't get it. But it's still kind of cool to think about. Now, Philip actually had a older daughter named Beatrix of Swabia, who had her. She never had any kids. So anyway, that was that. This is Alfonso X. Ugh. So once we get to 1228, Alfonso X is out of here, and then this guy is in. That might be. Nah, that's no king. I don't know who this guy is, honestly. I'd tell you if I knew, but I don't. So in 1228, Friedrich II has a son. However, doesn't go as planned. Let's see. All right, so if we're going to Heinrich VI, and then he has son Friedrich II. He becomes Conrad IV. Actually, he does become Holy Roman Emperor very briefly, but you'll see what happens. So this is Conrad IV, right here, King Conrad IV. I don't think he doesn't does he become Holy Roman Emperor? No, he becomes King of Germany. He does not become Holy Roman Emperor, but Friedrich II is Holy Roman Emperor. So this all holds true until we get to 12. I don't think much happens until 1248. Oh, 1248. This guy over here is the son of... I changed the picture. That was what it was. He's the son of Philip. This guy here is actually that guy. So that grave is this person. Just going to clean that up. So he actually does die in 1248. So now after him, Alfonso X is now back in the line of succession, 1249. But when we get to 1250, Friedrich II dies. He'd been on the throne since 1215, so he'd been on the throne for very solid 35 years. So he does die in 1250. So now Conrad IV is king, and then Alfonso X is actually the heir now, although he probably won't get elected. Oh, he might actually. I'm not going to tell you. Yeah, that's Alfonso X. And then this guy over here would probably be Alfonso X's brother, I'm assuming, most likely. Yes, it is. He is... These are Spanish. Alfonso X was king of Castile, not Spain, because Spain was divided. There's Aragon and Castile and stuff. So this is his younger brother, Enrique de Castile y León. So he was a Castile and León. But in 1252, I think... Does Conrad IV have a son? Let's see. All right, Conrad IV. Born in 1228, wasn't he? No, there he is. So yeah, he does have a son named Conrad of Swabia right here. He does not become king, I don't think. Yeah, he was defeated by Charles of Anjou at the Tagliacozzo battle. He was imprisoned and sentenced to death. He was beheaded in Naples in 1268. So he was only 16 years old and got beheaded. That is kind of sad. So Conrad IV dies in 1254. He'd only been king for 4 years, and now there's a problem because the Hohenstaufens are now pretty much dead. Well, they're not, but the nobles decide to elect somebody completely different. But this guy never serves as emperor. He's kind of just king of Germany. They elect two people. The first one is Alfonso X, but they don't elect Alfonso X immediately because what immediately happens is they elect this guy over here. Now, I have the English coat of arms here because this guy here is Richard of Cornwall, who is an English prince. He was the brother of King Henry III of England. But they don't elect Henry III himself because he's already ruling in England. But this is his younger brother, Richard of Cornwall. So he actually becomes the king of Germany for a little bit. He's elected Holy Roman Emperor. And then Alfonso X wasn't elected immediately, but Alfonso X never really rules. And Richard of Cornwall doesn't really rule either, but there is no Holy Roman Emperor until like 1273 anyway. So that's Richard of Cornwall. So Alfonso X is kind of elected too. So they elect Alfonso X and Richard of Cornwall. So Richard of Cornwall I'm just showing here because he was the more realistic candidate. So if we get to him, we can find out his heirs. So now they're all English right now. There could have been a chance that it could have switched to an English dynasty if Richard of Cornwall would have had a stronghold on power. Now, Richard himself And so he actually does end up ruling until his death. He has a son. His eldest son is Henry de Almaine, who's who this guy is. He was born in 1235. His eldest son, and then he's got a second son by the name of. I want to say, well, we'll find out here. His second son is going to be Edmund of Cornwall, Almaine. So Edmund and Henry are his two sons. Obviously, he would become Heinrich VII, I guess, but this is Richard of Cornwall, so I guess you get King Richard in the Holy Roman Empire, King of Germany. Nothing in the succession changes until 1272, because in 1271, who dies in 1271? His eldest son, Richard of Cornwall's eldest son, not Edmund, this is Henry de Almaine, he dies in 1271. So now in 1272, Edmund is now the heir. Now he doesn't have any sons. So maybe they could have switched to a female rule, like a male preference rule, but it's still semi-Salic at this point. And it will be semi-Salic, I think, for the rest of the history of the Holy Roman Empire anyway. So semi-Salic law. So Richard of Cornwall, now his brother Henry III. So this is the amazing Henry III right here. Henry III is actually second heir to the Holy Roman Empire at this point. But in 1272, he actually ends up dying. Henry III and Richard of Cornwall. They both died the same year. So after Richard of Cornwall dies, they elect a new guy. They actually elect a German guy, not an English guy. A person from the House of Habsburg. Now the House of Habsburg, right here with King Rudolph I, which does not become Holy Roman Emperor. So now, we're back to the Holy Roman Empire. So this is the House of Habsburg now. The House of Habsburg was really a very minor house, only achieving the rank of Count previously, the Count of Habsburg. But Rudolph I was the first Habsburg king to rule the Holy Roman Empire. And the House of Habsburg actually ends up ruling the Holy Roman Empire for pretty much the rest of its history. But not exactly, because it does get taken over a few times, but in the early parts of it. But Rudolph I is the first king of the House of Habsburg. I hate to spoil this, but actually the last emperor of Austria was part of the House of Habsburg, and the current Holy Roman Emperor today is a member of the House of Habsburg. The House of Habsburg plays a major role in, and Habsburg actually ends up ruling in Belgium, I believe, and Spain. So it's a very major house in Europe. So anyhow, Rudolph I, he was born back in, I don't know when he was born, but something like that. All right, so it's now we're in the House of Habsburg, so we got to transfer the power over to, let me find him. All right, so he's got his eldest son. This is Albrecht the First. He becomes Albrecht the First, also known as Albert. Albrecht. He was born in 1255. Rudolph himself was born in 1218, so he is quite old at this point. So Albrecht, right here, is the eldest son of Rudolph. He is now the heir. And then he's got a second son named Rudolph II of Habsburg, who's now the next heir after him. This all holds true until we get to 1282, because in 1282, I believe Albrecht I has a son named Rudolph III of Habsburg. So he's of Habsburg, not Holy Roman Emperor. Again, Rudolph I, as I said, did not become Holy Roman Emperor. We did not get a Holy Roman Emperor for a long time. The last Holy Roman Emperor was Friedrich II, way back in 1250. So there was a period of about, let's see, about 60 years without a Holy Roman Emperor, without an emperor in Europe, the longest since Charlemagne. So that was pretty crazy. So he's just king. And this guy is now the second heir after Albrecht. This is Albrecht's son, so that would be Rudolph's grandson. Rudolph does eventually end up dying in 1291. When I was making this slideshow, I screwed up big time, and I had to go all the way back here. I was in like the 1300s, and then I had to go back to this because I realized I'd screwed up something. But nothing screwed up right now. So anyhow, In 1291, that is when Rudolph dies. But there's complications. Because the throne does not pass to his son. It actually goes to a member of the House of Nassau, who is not even related remotely to the Habsburgs, or even the Welfs, or the Hohenstaufens, or even the House of Plantagenet in England. I think. Well, there is some relation, I guess. Well, no, there's not, because the House of Nassau. Right here. This guy is King Adolf. He only rules for about 6 years, though. But so this is his heir right here, would be. So this is the House of Nassau. House of Nassau ends up ruling in, like, I believe, the Dutch Republic, the Netherlands later down the line. So this is the very early House of Nassau. This is early Habsburgs. And then this is Nassau. So, yeah, Habsburg actually has its roots all the way back to the 1200s. So that's kind of cool. So 1292, Adolf is on the throne. He is not emperor. I don't think that'd be crazy if he did become emperor. Nah, he's just king. Then his brother's descendants later become the House of Orange-Nassau with, William III and then later had kings of the Netherlands, and I think the current monarch of the Netherlands. Yeah, Willem Alexander, who's been king since 2013, the current king of the Netherlands is part of the House of Nassau. So that's how this is. And these are his heirs. They don't matter because they're not going to come up anymore. But he does end up getting, I don't know if he dies in 1298 or if he gets deposed, but they re-elect the Habsburgs. So now Albrecht I, the rightful king, is now king in 1299. So the Habsburgs are back. This guy here, again, is Rudolf III von Habsburg. And then this guy over here, I don't know what his name is. I believe this is Albert. No, this is Friedrich I of Habsburg. Friedrich the Handsome. So, there he is. Or Frederick the Fair. I guess he's known as Frederick the... I don't know, he's just Frederick the Fair because he just becomes king. He's not Holy Roman Emperor. That's 1299. So, Albrecht II, or is he Albrecht the First? I don't remember. He's Albrecht the First. He's Albrecht the First. Albrecht the First leads us into 1300. So by the time we get to 1308, 1307, in 1307, this guy here dies. Rudolph III dies. So now this is his brother, by the way. Albrecht II, second son, is now the heir as of 1308. And then this guy over here is none other than the other brother, Leopold I of Habsburg, who is the third son of Albrecht II. Albrecht II had a lot of sons, which is good. But in 1308, he dies. So now they elect... Does Albrecht actually die in 1308? He does. Albrecht I dies in 1308. He's only been on the throne since 1298, so he's only been on the throne for 10 years, but he dies in 1308, and so now they elect this guy here, who is part of the House of Luxembourg. So now we get the House of Luxembourg. So we had the House of Habsburg, Nassau, and Luxembourg all at war against each other right now. And then we'll eventually get to the House of Wittelsbach, which is even in there. So we got 4 separate houses right now. Luxembourg. So this is the period of time where it shifts really fast from house to house before the Habsburgs finally take it back. About 100 years from now, the Habsburgs are eventually going to take it back and actually sustain power. So this right here is a guy from the House of Luxembourg. He is Holy Roman Emperor Heinrich VII. He's the first person to be crowned Holy Roman Emperor all the way since Friedrich II. Friedrich II, he was the last Holy Roman Emperor. Until we get to this guy. That was the longest period since Charlemagne that we didn't have a Holy Roman Emperor, but he becomes Heinrich VII. He's from the House of Luxembourg. This guy right here is a guy named John the Blind, who is his son. And then this is going to be Johannes II. I think it's John the Blind's brother. So we'll see here. Yeah, I don't know if I should pull it up or not. Yeah, I will. He dies in 1313, I think. Yeah, Heinrich VII doesn't rule very long anyway. Okay. John the Blind. He doesn't have any kids. But in 1313, 1313, this guy's born. Or maybe this guy dies in 1312. I think that guy dies in 1312. So now we get this guy, who I'm not sure who this is right now. But he is now he might be part of the house of, he might just be a Habsburg, but I don't know. He might be a Nassau too. Nassau does not reclaim the throne, so it's in the Luxembourg family still. So in 1313, Heinrich VII dies, so now the house goes back to Habsburg. The throne goes back to Habsburg once he dies in 1313. So that brings us to 1314. In 1314, Frederick becomes Frederick the Fair. He does not become Friedrich III because he's not Holy Roman Emperor. He just serves as King of Germany. But he's on the throne for a long time. He's on the throne for a while. Because when Friedrich the Fair becomes King of Germany and Habsburg, they elect a guy from the house of Wittelsbach who becomes Holy Roman Emperor over there, Ludwig IV, but he doesn't actually become Holy Roman Emperor till later on. But Frederick the Fair is the rightful Holy Roman Emperor, but he's not. He's King of Germany. It's weird. And then his heir right now, 1289, mistaken. But he's Friedrich the First, I guess, of Habsburg, but king. But anyhow, this is his Leopold, his brother, and then this guy over here is Albrecht of Habsburg, who's the Duke of Austria. Albrecht II of Austria is who he's named, but he's not. He's just the Duke of Austria. So this all holds true until we get to 1316. In 1316, I believe Frederick the Fair has a son named Friedrich of Habsburg, but he doesn't live very long. He's an infant. He dies in 1322, so he didn't live long at all. So now the succession's back to how it was. And then he doesn't have any other sons. So in 1326, though, Leopold dies. So now this guy here, Albrecht, the Duke of Austria, is now the heir to Frederick the Fair in 1327. And then this is another son named Albrecht II of Habsburg. So he had two sons named Albert. That is interesting. But he was born 1298, so he's there. No, that's not true. This is the same guy. Who is this? I think this is actually Heinrich of Austria. Yeah, this is Heinrich of Austria, another son of Albrecht I. Albrecht I back here had a lot of sons. These are all sons of him, all of them. But in 1326, Leopold dies, but in 1327, Heinrich dies. So, 1328, we get this guy Otto of Habsburg. He is the last son of Albrecht II. In total, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sons. He had 6 sons in total, which is a lot. So he's the 6th and final son of Albrecht II. That brings us to 1330. In 1330, Frederick the Fair dies. So this brings us to the House of Wittelsbach with Karl IV, Holy Roman Emperor. He does become Holy Roman Emperor in 1331. He's Karl IV, also known as Charles IV. Now, who is Charles III and Charles II? I don't even remember those guys. Okay, so who is Charles? Okay, so this is interesting how they did it. So they don't really count the kings in the succession as numbers. So this is Karl the Fourth because Charles the First was Charlemagne way back in the day. Charlemagne, his name literally means Charles the Great in French. So Charlemagne was Charles the First. Charles II was Charles the Bald of West Francia. Charles the Bald is considered to be Emperor Charles II, and then Charles the Fat is Emperor Charles III, and then this guy is Emperor Charles IV, or in German, Karl IV. Karl with a K. The House of Wittelsbach, I don't think holds on to power very long. And then I believe this is probably Rudolph and his brother. Oh, this is no Ludwig. He's not Charles. He's Ludwig. This is not Charles. This is Ludwig IV. My bad. He ends up ruling until 1347. I don't think anything happens till then in the Wittelsbachs. Place to fit this poster because it's huge. Okay, so in 1347, he dies. So now it transfers over to the house of, what house are we in now? We're in the house of, back to the house of Luxembourg. Okay. Back to the Luxembourg kings with, this is Karl IV, Charles IV. So again, Charlemagne was Charles I, Charles the Bald was Charles II, Charles the Fat was Charles III. They're all emperors. And now he does become Holy Roman Emperor. Oh, by the way, this guy, Ludwig IV, was Holy Roman Emperor as well. So Charles IV, Karl IV is also emperor. Now, he is the son of John the Blind. If you remember John the Blind, this guy here is his son. Now, he was dead by this point, so that's who this guy is. So we're into the 1348. Okay, so this guy here is Wenceslaus. Oh, let me make sure. Luxembourg actually holds on to power for a little bit longer until it shifts back to Wittelsbach for a little bit, and then it switches back to Luxembourg, and then it finally goes to Habsburg for good. But we'll see what happens here. So we're in Luxembourg for a little bit. So this guy ends up dying in 1378 later down the line. So let me see. Pull him up. Now Karl was actually king of Bohemia as well at the same time. He was king of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Emperor, so that was kind of cool. He was born back in 1316. He's got, his eldest son is Vaclav, who becomes Wenceslaus later down the line. No. And then this is going to be Wenceslaus. No, it's not Wenceslaus. He doesn't have any sons yet. Wenceslaus wasn't born until 1361. This is actually Johann Heinrich of Bohemia, his younger brother. And then this guy over here is Johann's. Nope, it is. He has a sister named Bon, who, well, this is Ottokar. I don't even know who this guy is. No, this is Wenzel the First of Luxembourg, who is his other brother. So by the time we get to 1361, Karl IV actually has, well, no, I should mention Karl IV and these guys actually have a sister, Bon, who marries Jean II of France. So the French monarchs will actually be having some succession in the Holy Roman Empire. So we had like all the kingdoms today, France and England, but we're not there yet. So in 1361, Karl IV has a son. His name is, what is his name? I'm blind. This is Wenceslaus right here. King Vaclav Wenceslaus, the Fourth of Bohemia. He's Wenceslaus the Fourth of Bohemia, but when he becomes Holy Roman Emperor, he doesn't become Holy Roman Emperor, he's just king. Karl the Fourth was Holy Roman Emperor though. So this is Wenceslaus. And then that holds us over until we get to 1368, because that's when he has a second son named Sigismund. And Sigismund does later become a Holy Roman Emperor. So that's in 1368. Nothing happens until 1378, because that is when, 10 years later, Karl IV dies. But instead of switching houses like it typically did, it actually passed to Wenceslaus, his son, which is kind of surprising because he was only 17 in 1378, but did still pass to him. So the House of Luxembourg actually still holds in. In the next monarch video, I should probably put the royal house over here instead of just the fact so you know what royal house it is, especially in the Holy Roman Empire when it was switching all the time. So Wenceslaus from the House of Luxembourg is now king. Sigismund, his brother, is his heir, and then I think we'll have to find out here what's going on. Sigismund, there's no way he has a kid yet. This could be, let me see. I think it says Johann's son, Jobst of Bohemia, I think is who this is. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know who this guy is, but it doesn't matter. In 1390s. So, okay, it does. This guy, whoever this is, dies in 1396. Let me see if I can figure out who this guy is. Where are we at? 1379. Wenceslaus is king. He's just king of Germany. All right. Let's see, siblings. Margrethe. Maybe she has a son. No, that couldn't be him. Possibility it could have been Wenzel's son. No, didn't. So I don't even know who this is. Either way, he dies in 1396. I don't think I might have the succession rate. You know, that could be Wenceslaus's son. I never thought about that. But I feel like he'd be too young by this point to have a child. Well, not necessarily. I don't know. Dies in 1396. So now once we get to the year I was born, 1397. Looky who it is the second heir. Charles VI of France. Charles the Mad, the guy that thought he was made out of glass, is the second heir. Because Wenceslaus, no, it wasn't Wenceslaus, I don't think. No, it was Karl IV. He had a sister who married Jean II of England. Or not of England, Jean II of France. Jean II of France, this is his grandson. Jean II's son was Charles V. Charles V had died in 1380, so at this point, we got Charles VI, who's actually the king of France. So Charles VI is probably feeling good, but Charles VI didn't even think he was king of France. He's like, I'm not king of France, you know, my son isn't even real. I don't know why you guys think I'm the king. I'm not. I guess he was going mad, but he was there, and he was king of France, and he's the heir in 1397, the second heir. Now, this all holds true until Wenceslaus dies in 1400. So now they bring back the House of Wittelsbach with Rupert I. Well, this guy is kind of stupid. I don't care for Rupert. I don't think he becomes emperor. He probably just is just king. Yeah, he's just King Rupert. He only rules until 1410 anyway, but let me pull him up. Oh, jeez. That poster is really hard to sit up. Wonder how hot it is outside. What's the temperature at right now? Maybe I can go outside. It's 55 degrees and sunny. I'm going outside. All right, guys, let's go outside where I have better lighting and stuff. I do this in all the videos. I go outside in the middle because it's not the middle of the night because I actually went to bed. Oh. All right. Ouch. Ouch. All right. So now we're into 1401 because in 1400, Wenceslaus had died. So now we get to Rupert the First, or maybe he's just Rupert. I can read this way better. I can actually sit this up next to this so you guys don't have to see it. That sucks because I can't read it. I gotta find a good setup. Alright, hold on. Alright, Rupert, here we go. Let me figure out when he was born. King of Germany. Alright. He was born in 1352. Here he is. Ruprecht. He was known as Ruprecht. He was actually Ruprecht III von der Pfalz. Ruprecht. That is basically, I think, Robert, probably, in German. Anyhow, he has a son at this point named Ruprecht. No, this was his second son, Ludwig. His first son died in 1397, so we didn't see him. So this is Ludwig III von der Pfalz. He was born in 1378, died in 1436, but he doesn't inherit the throne. And then he's got his second son named Johann. So it holds true until we get to 1406, because in 1406, Ludwig III has a son named Ruprecht von der Pfalz in 1406, and that's who this guy is right here. But in 1410, the Wittelsbachs are done. The Wittelsbach, I do need to mention, though, that the House of Wittelsbach, later down the line, ended up ruling in Bavaria after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire, and all the kingdoms were split up. It ends up ruling in Bavaria, the House of Wittelsbach. And then the House of Nassau ends up ruling in the Netherlands. Like I said, the House of Welf, I think, died out. The House of Luxembourg ends up ruling, I think, over in the House of Wettin. There's the House of Wettin somewhere in there. They end up ruling until in Saxony. But we don't worry about the House of Wettin because they don't really care in the Holy Roman Empire. So once we get to 1411, they re-elect Sigismund. Or they elect Sigismund, and if you remember, Sigismund was the younger brother of Wenceslaus and the son of Karl IV, Holy Roman Empire, Holy Roman Emperor. Now, Sigismund actually becomes Holy Roman Emperor, the first guy to become Holy Roman Emperor in a while, because Wenceslaus and Ruprecht were not Holy Roman Emperors. They were just King of Germany. So in 1411, we get good old Sigismund. He is now Holy Roman Emperor. He does rule for a little bit. So now, since the house, he's a Luxembourg. The other guy was, Ruprecht was from the House of Wittelsbach. Sigismund is a Luxembourg, and he actually has a daughter, but he doesn't have any sons, so the House of Luxembourg is going to die with him. So after him, the heir is actually, with the semi-Salic law, is Charles VI of France, and then Charles VI in 1403 had his son. This guy becomes Charles VII of France. So Charles VII is actually the Dauphin in France, and Dauphin was a title they give to the eldest son of the monarch. So he was the Dauphin currently in France. Like Louis le Grand Dauphin, if you guys know who that guy is. One of my favorite historical figures. He was a Dauphin, les petits Dauphins, they were all Dauphins. This guy was the Dauphin, Charles. So he was the heir to France, and the French king is the heir to the Holy Roman Empire right now. Now, Sigismund is the Holy Roman Emperor, like I already said, which is pretty cool. So holds true until I think we get to 1422, because in 1422, Charles VI of France dies. So now Charles VII inherits the throne of France in 1423 and becomes the heir to the Holy Roman Empire after Sigismund. Now, in 1423, that same year, Charles VII actually had a son, and he will be later become Louis XI of France. So Louis XI is second in line to the Holy Roman Empire right now. Now, they are not Wittelsbachs. They are part of the House of Valois in France. So, had Sigismund died and they elected Charles VII, we'd get the House of Valois The House of Valois was a junior branch of the House of Capet, which, if you know Hugh Capet, that was how that came on. The House of Valois ended up ruling. Little history lesson on France. House of Valois ended up ruling until I think 1589, and then it switched to the House of Bourbon, which actually ruled in France until the French Revolution, and actually still rules in Spain. The House of Bourbon is the throne of Spain. So Louis XI is the second heir, and Charles VII is the heir to Sigismund. This all stays the same until 1437 because Sigismund dies. Now, Sigismund died in 1437, so it would have been very interesting had the nobles elected Charles VII to be king or to be Holy Roman Emperor. That would have been something. Because imagine if you would have had France and Holy Roman Empire united. That would have been like reuniting the Franks. Because the last person to rule over all of that was Charles the Fat. We could have got Charles VII to rule over that too. That would have been crazy. But they didn't do it. And instead, they brought back the good old House of Habsburg. Because they're the only house that has anybody else, because the House of Wittelsbach's dead, the House of Nassau's not dead, but they don't like the House of Nassau. The House of Nassau's garbage. Wittelsbach, they don't like, and the House of Luxembourg's dead. The House of Luxembourg actually had a good firm hold on power, so they decide to bring back the Habsburgs. And the Habsburgs, starting with King Albrecht II, is going to be on the throne for the rest of the history of the Holy Roman Empire. So for the rest of the video, the House of Habsburg, long live the House of Habsburg. It's going to be on the throne for the rest of the history of this thing. Now, I should mention Albrecht II was actually the son-in-law of Sigismund. Sigismund had a daughter named Elizabeth of Luxembourg who married Albrecht, part of the House of Habsburg. So he married a Luxembourg. So that really strengthened his claim anyway. So if he wouldn't have done that, there's a chance that the House of Habsburg might have not have become back on the throne. But Albrecht II is the first king to actually be on the new firm hold of Habsburg. But he does not rule very long. But anyway, he ends up dying, I think, in 1439, so that ain't good. Not 1139, 1439. My cat is screaming. Oh, let me find him here. Where is he at? There he is. Albrecht II. So, yeah, that's him. So he ends up dying in 1439. He only rules a year. So now this is going to transfer. He is actually related to Albrecht I. If you remember Frederick the Fair. Frederick the Fair had a brother named Albert II, the Duke of Austria, who was already on there. I already showed you him. He had his eldest son was Albert III, and then Albert IV, and then Albert V. This guy was Albert V, but he becomes Albrecht II of the Holy Roman Empire, or just Germany. He's just king of Germany. He does not become Holy Roman Emperor. Generally, kings that only reign for a little bit in the Holy Roman Empire are not Holy Roman Emperors, but I think he's the last Holy Roman Emperor that was not Holy Roman Emperor. I think the rest were all Holy Roman Emperors. There were no kings of Germany. After this, once the next guy comes in, well, 1440, I'll just let you know this right now. This is going to be the second cousin of Albrecht. His name is Frederick. He becomes Frederick III. Friedrich III. Now, they do not count Frederick the Fair as Friedrich because the first Friedrich was obviously Frederick Barbarossa. If we go all the way back to the 1100s, Frederick Barbarossa. Right here was Frederick I. Friedrich I. Friedrich II is this guy here, 1218. So now we get to Friedrich III, 1440. Friedrich IV was one of the longer reigning emperors. Now he does become Holy Roman Emperor. He's the guy who establishes. Now the Holy Roman Empire still had an elective monarchy at this time, but he really had a very firm hold on power. Friedrich III did. He was a fantastic emperor. He signed a law, passed laws that would govern the empire for the rest of its history. He allowed the Habsburgs to stay on the throne for as long as they did. He was on the throne for 53 years, and he made it so that the Habsburgs actually had a primogeniture format. A semi-salic law primogeniture format finally was established in 1440, so now the succession was actually in good hands. And he strengthened the empire a lot. And he was the first Habsburg to become Holy Roman Emperor. And now he also made the title Holy Roman Emperor an automatic title. So now every single person to rule after him will be a Holy Roman Emperor. There will be no King of Germany. Oliver wants out. Let's go let him. You got to show your face in the video. You want out. I'm not just gonna let you out. All right, here he is. It's actually kind of chilly. No, it's October anymore, so here he is. What do you think about Friedrich III? He was a good king, wasn't he? No, he wasn't a king. He was an emperor. All right. So he becomes emperor in 1440. Let's see. When does he die? Holy Roman Emperor. Friedrich III. Alright, so he was born in 1415. That's when he was born. I just have to find his birth year to find him on here. 1415. Man, that's when he was born. Here he is. He's buried at the St. Stephen's Cathedral. His birthday is on September 21st, which is my half birthday, so it's kind of cool. Okay. So this is going to be his brother, Albrecht VI of Habsburg, is his heir currently, and then he's got a younger brother named, wait, no, I don't know who that is. Ernst. Could this be an uncle? No, who is that? Who is this guy? Oh no, I don't know who this is. I should know. Come on, Friedrich. Friedrich III, he's got no kids by 1440. He's got one brother. Alright, no, that's not him. I don't know who this guy is. Who is that? Maybe it's like his uncle's kid or something. I already did him. This could be Sigismund of Habsburg. Oh, that's who that is. This is Sigismund of Habsburg. I think his first cousin. Sigismund of Habsburg, who is the youngest son of his father's line. The youngest son of Leopold III, who is the great nephew of Frederick the Fair, way back in the old Habsburg guy. But Friedrich III was Holy Roman Emperor, like I said. So we're continuing to go through time. We're into the end of the 1440s, or into the 1450s. In 1455, Friedrich III has a son, but he dies young, sadly. Let me find him here. Ernst was Friedrich III's father. Let's see. So this is Christoph of Habsburg. He's born in 1455, dies in 1456. So now, Albrecht VI is now back in the air. But in 1459, Friedrich III has his son. His name is Maximilian. He will later become Maximilian I of the Holy Roman Empire. He will later become Holy Roman Emperor himself. Maximilian I, the heir to Friedrich III. But that's not for a while, because Friedrich III is going to last a little bit longer. Which jumps Albrecht VI down to second in line. He remained there until 1463, because in 1463, Albrecht dies. Luckily, though, he does have... Well, that's not going to be him, because... Who's this going to be? I think this might be Christoph von Baden. But I also might not be. I think this is Christoph von Baden, who was Friedrich III's nephew. His sister had a son. I think that's who this is. He was born back in 1453. So that's him. So Maximilian I is right there. In 1466, Friedrich III does have another son. However, he doesn't last, and he dies in... His name is Johannes. And he dies in 1467. So now this guy's back. Holds true until we get to 1478. 1478, Maximilian has a son, so it takes precedence over any siblings or cousins. This is the primogeniture format, which is really nice. Primogeniture is such a good form of succession. All right. So this guy is Philip, or Felipe. Eventually, he was born German, Belgium. He marries Juana Joanna the Mad. If you ever heard of her, she was the Spanish princess. She was the well, shoot, what am I saying? She was the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, the famous monarchs in Spain who were actually ruling at this time. They funded Christopher Columbus's voyage to the New World. So after him, he marries into the Spanish royal family. So now the empire basically becomes Spanish after this. In the 1400s, but later down the line. So this all holds true until 1493. Well, 1492 is when Columbus sails the ocean blue. We should all know that. But in 1493, Friedrich III dies after being on the throne since 1440. He'd been on the throne for a long time. So he'd been on the throne all the way back since 1440. So he'd been on the throne for quite a while. Again, he very powerful. He had a good hold on power, like I said. So now, in 1494, we get Maximilian. Maximilian I is now Holy Roman Emperor. In 1494. So Philip here, I'm just going to call him Philip because he was really known as Philip. He is now the heir. And then this guy over here, I believe, is Maximilian's, probably like his sister's kid or something. Yeah, this is Sidonia von Bayern, who was his daughter's son, or his sister's son, I think. This guy here. I don't really know. No, I don't know who that is. Man, I did not know how to use semi-Salic law when I did this slideshow. And it screws me up because I have no idea who these people are. And sorry, but I don't know who this is. This is Philip here. His Maximilian only had one son. So Maximilian I brings us into 1500. 1500, though, Philip has a son himself, so that's good. His name is Charles, who will become Karl V of Holy Roman Empire. But he also becomes King of Spain at the same time. He's the King of Spain and the King of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, that was supposed to happen with Philip, but you'll see what happens to Philip in 1506. Because in 1506, Philip actually dies. Maximilian I's heir dies in 1506. By the time I get to 1507, Maximilian I's heir is his grandson, Charles. Now, Charles is ridiculously strong because once his mom is technically the Queen of Castile, so he's going to inherit the kingdom of Castile. Now, the kingdom of Aragon and Castile had already been united with Ferdinand and Isabella, so that was united into the kingdom of Spain, but it's still technically the kingdom of Castile, which his mother is. So once she dies, but she ends up dying in 1516. It's going to go to him. He's going to become King of Castile, and then later down the line in 1519, Maximilian's going to die. Then he's going to become Holy Roman Emperor. So he's going to become Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, which is crazy. He's actually the first King of Spain. So that's kind of cool. And then this is his younger brother, Ferdinand, who is also the son of Philip here. Charles and so he becomes Carlos the First of Spain, and then Karl the Fifth of Holy Roman Empire. We just know him as Charles the Great. Well, not Charles the Great. Some people call him Charles the Great. I don't really know. This is Ferdinand, though, his younger brother. So in 1516, he becomes King of Spain. But while he's King of Spain, actually, Maximilian the First is still Holy Roman Emperor because he's still alive. But he does die in 1519. 1519 is when Maximilian the First dies. So by the time we get to 1520, Karl V is now the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Spain. He ends up ruling more territory than Charlemagne does because he rules the Iberian Peninsula and the Holy Roman Empire. So he becomes the most powerful monarch in Europe at the time, which makes all the other powers at the time of like England with Henry VIII and then Francois I in France pretty worried because he rules over a lot of land and he is a very powerful king, Karl V. With being Holy Roman Empire, you cannot be an empire. You can be an emperor. He was, with being Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Spain, was a very powerful position. And you'll see what he does to limit his power later when he dies. Obviously, he keeps it until he dies, which he lives a long time. A good amount of time. I am back yet again. My computer decided to crash as if things couldn't get any worse. This is like the 4th or 5th take of this. But hopefully I'm in for good now. I'm not going to whip out my wig until we get to the powdered wig era, which I'll let you know when that starts. But for right now, I just got my hat. I did a little bit of checking. I went and got a shower and stuff. And I realized that 1521 right here, well, it's about where we left off. So basically, let's just do a little recap real quick. So Maximilian I died in 1519, and then Karl V becomes Holy Roman Emperor. He's also the King of Spain, like I said before. His heir is his brother Ferdinand, and then his second heir is actually this guy over here, whose name is, I found out who this guy is. His name is Friedrich III the Wise von Sachsen. So the reason he's related in is because if we go all the way back to the 1400s, and we see Friedrich III here, Holy Roman Emperor Friedrich III, he had a sister named Marguerite. She had a son named Ernst, who was born in 1441, died in 1486. And then it was his son who became, well, I guess he's not here yet. This guy. So he is like a third cousin or something of Karl V. So Maximilian I dies in 1519. Again, Karl over here, Charles, was already king of Spain at this point. He had inherited that when his mother died in 1516. So he had already been that. And then in 1519, when Maximilian I dies, he becomes that. Remember, he's the grandson of Maximilian I because his son was Philip here, who died young. I think Philip only lived to be like 28 or something. All right, so we get to the 1520s. So Ferdinand's the heir. Charles V does not have any kids yet. Or Karl V, whatever you call him. He was born in 1500. Okay. Carlos is what he was known in Spain. So this all holds true, I think, for the rest of the 1520s. But in 1525, Friedrich over here dies. And he's pretty old. I mean, he was born in, like, I don't know when he was born, but he's old. Oh, I lost him. Crap. Friedrich. Oh, my gosh. Such a chore to find this stuff on here. Oh, where's he at? Hold on, guys. Give me a sec. I'm coming. He's all the way. He's one of those Leader guys, Sashin. Here he is. Okay. He was born in 1463, so he was a little bit old. He actually lived to be 62 years old. Died on May 5th of 1525. Now this guy right here is his brother Johann. Now becomes the heir. It's his brother. He doesn't have any children when he dies in 1525. So once we get to 1526, we have this guy Johann the Constant. Now that he's only second heir for a year, because in 1527, Charles V, the emperor himself, has a son. Now this guy will later become King Philip II of Spain, Felipe el Dos. What's going on up there? All right, let me go back to the tree. So I'm in Friedrich III, and then we get Maximilian. We get Philip, and then we get Hartwoods. Okay. So this guy becomes King Felipe el Dos of Spain, and you'll see why he does not become Holy Roman Emperor later on. You'll see who does, but that's in 1527. Charles V, I think. He does have another son way later on in 1545. So he actually holds his empire. Remember, through this whole period, he's ruling over Spain and the Holy Roman Empire throughout all these decades. So throughout the 1520s and 1530s, nothing happens in the 1530s succession-wise until we get to 1545. Because in 1545, Charles V actually has another son. His name is Don Juan de Austria. Born in 1545. It's true. Then we get to the end of the 1540s with 1550. 50s go by until we get to 1558, because in 1558 something happens with the succession. So since Charles V, I'm just calling him Karl V. So since Karl V had been king of the Holy Roman Empire, or he'd been Holy Roman Emperor and the king of Spain, and now this essentially, he decides to split his kingdom up into two parts, bringing back Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. So he gives the title King of Spain to the senior branch of the Habsburgs, which would be his son, Felipe II. So once he dies, well, he does die in 1558, so it's a little bit of a dispute. Some people think he died in 1556, but most sources I found said 1558, so that's what I put. So Felipe, he becomes Felipe II of Spain. So he says the senior branch of the Habsburgs can become Spanish monarchs. These two become Spanish. And then he decides to give his brother Ferdinand the title of Holy Roman Emperor. So he gives Ferdinand, his younger brother, Holy Roman Emperor, and then his son becomes the King of Spain. That's why he's kicked out of the succession. So by 1559, we have Holy Roman Emperor. Again, they're all Holy Roman Emperors still. So now Ferdinand is the Holy Roman Emperor, and he the Habsburgs switch into two branches. You have the Spanish Habsburgs and the Austrian Habsburgs. So this is the Austrian branch. Now, the only way it would go to the Spanish branch of the Habsburgs is if all the Austrians died out, which they didn't. Actually, the Spanish branch of the Habsburgs, this ended up being the Habsburg senior branch because all the Spanish heirs, I think they ran out of heirs by 1700, so they had the War of the Spanish Succession, and they didn't want Spain uniting with the Holy Roman Empire again, so it went to the French House of Bourbon later down the line. That was in 1700, so about 140 years after this, but that's how that is. So again, Ferdinand, he becomes Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand the First. Ferdinand the First. All right, he rules 1558 when he becomes emperor. His heir right now is his eldest son, of course. Ferdinand didn't have any kids earlier, but he does now. Let's see. He was born in 1502, I think. All right, 1503. Okay, Ferdinand has a son. His eldest son is a guy named Maximilian. He was actually born the same year as Felipe II, 1527. So this is Maximilian, his son. And then he has his second son by the name of Rudolph. Right here, I believe that's his name. I think it's Rudolph. Okay. Oh, no. So this is Ferdinand and then his son Maximilian. And then Maximilian even has a son named Rudolph. So this is Rudolph over here, the grandson of Ferdinand I. So now the Austrian Habsburgs are still. It's still that House of Habsburg, though. All right. So now we get into the 1560s. Ferdinand I dies in 1564 because he's pretty old by the time he becomes emperor. I think he's like in his late 50s when he becomes emperor and then dies when he's like 61. So he dies in 1564, leaving the throne to his son. So now the Holy Roman Emperor in 1565 is Maximilian II. I like Maximilian II. He's pretty cool. Now, his eldest son is Rudolph, is now the heir. And then Maximilian II's second son over here, whose name is Matthias. He is the second heir after Rudolph. Wait, no, that's wrong. This is actually Ernest of Austria. Is who this actually is. I think. Yeah, this is Ernest of Austria. Actually, I got that wrong. So this is actually the second son of Matthias was the third son of Maximilian II. So this is Maximilian II's second son. So we get to 1565. 1565 was the year the Spanish had settled St. Augustine, which was the first English settlement in what is now the United States. So that's kind of what's happening over there at this point. But this is during the Holy Roman Empire. So we're again during the hat phase, so I got my hat on. And this is Maximilian II's second son. So that brings us to the end of the 1560s. Now we get to 1570. And nothing happens there until 1576. Because in 1576, that is when Maximilian II dies. He'd been on the throne for only about 12 years. Not very long. But throne passes to his eldest son, Rudolph. By 1577, he becomes Rudolph II. Because you remember the previous Rudolph was the first Habsburg king. So he's Rudolph II. Is now the Holy Roman Emperor as of 1577. He does not have any sons, and he never does. So Ernest right now of Austria is his heir. And then he has his even younger brother. This is Matthias right here. And Matthias, they're all kids of Maximilian II. Matthias was born in 1557. So, about 20. So he does end up ruling for a while. Rudolph II does end up having a decent reign. Nothing happens even in the 1580s. So then we get to 1595. Because in 1595, that's when Ernest dies. I thought it was 1595. I guess not. When does he die? Let's find out. But anyhow, so he brings us into 1600. So I guess Ernest here dies in what the heck? Do they both die in the same year? Rudolph II doesn't die until 1612. Okay, I think I messed up. Because I'm pretty sure this guy died in 1595. Not 1612. But Rudolph II does die in 1612. Again, he's been on throne since 1576, so he was on throne for almost 40 years, like 36 years, so it's pretty good. So now Matthias is Holy Roman Emperor by 1613. And his heir, currently, is going to be... He doesn't have any kids himself. So his heir is going to be Ferdinand, who Maximilian II had a younger brother named Archduke Ferdinand. Charles II. Archduke Charles II of Inner Austria. And then he had a son named Ferdinand, and that's who this guy is here. So this would be the, I guess, first cousin of Matthias here. And then this guy over here is Johann Karl of Habsburg, who is the son of Ferdinand right here. He will later become Ferdinand II. He'll be the Holy Roman Emperor once he dies. Matthias only reigns until 1619. That's when he died, because he only ruled for about 7 years, and then we get Ferdinand II. Ferdinand II is now king. He was born in 1578. And his heir, also in 1619 as well, this guy dies. Ferdinand II's son dies in 1619, and Matthias. So by 1620, we get Ferdinand II is the current king, or the current Holy Roman Emperor. Yeah. Currently, about right now, we're about Felipe IV territory in the Spanish branch of the Habsburgs, but this is the Austrian branch. We don't care about the Spanish branch right now. So now his second son right here, his name is also Ferdinand. He will later become Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand III. So this is Ferdinand II right now. This will be Ferdinand III. And then he's got a younger son named Leopold Wilhelm Habsburg, who is now the heir after him. This all holds true until we get to 1630. Let's see, 1633, because in 1633 Ferdinand III has a son. Thank you. Yes. Right here. He's known as Ferdinand IV, but he never actually became Holy Roman Emperor. But that's him. And he's the son of Ferdinand III right here. Ferdinand II is still on the throne, so this would be Ferdinand II's grandson at this point. So that's how that is. So we're going to keep moving forward until we get to 1637. 1637 is when good old Ferdinand II dies, leaving the throne to his eldest son, Ferdinand III. Now, Ferdinand III has got, in total, his first son, Ferdinand here. And then he's got his second son, who's Philip August Habsburg. He was born in 1637, but he died in 1639 when he was 2. So by the time we get to 1640, the next heir is actually Ferdinand III. Has another son named Leopold. And now he, in 1640, or the year he was born was 1640, he is now the second heir after his eldest son, Ferdinand. So Ferdinand III does end up ruling all the way until 1657, but in 1654, the rest of the 1640s is straightforward. In 1654, that is when Ferdinand here dies, his eldest son. So now Leopold is now the heir. I bet Leopold was never expected to become emperor when he was growing up. And then now, Ferdinand III, Leopold ain't got any kids. I mean, he's only, 15? So next would be Ferdinand III's brother. That's the Wilhelm guy. That is Leopold Wilhelm Habsburg, who is also the youngest son of Ferdinand II here. So yeah, Ferdinand III still on the throne. Ferdinand III, well, this is in 1655. So in 1657, that is when Ferdinand III dies. Oh, we're in the 1600s now. I should probably put on my powdered wig because we're starting to get to the wig era right now. once, well, Leopold I is officially king now. Oh, what am I doing? Leopold I is officially on the throne, and he has a powdered wig, so I'm going to put on mine now. Now we're getting to business. So Leopold I actually ends up ruling for almost 50 years. He is on the throne for quite a long time. He's got no kids, though. Right now, he does eventually get them. He was born in 1640. So Leopold Wilhelm Habsburg is currently his heir. And then Leopold Wilhelm Habsburg, Leopold's heir is Leopold. He's Leopold I, by the way. I think I might get more Leopolds or not. Yeah, we do. But he's Leopold I. This guy over here, though, is an interesting story. I think. So if we go all the way up to Ferdinand III, if we go back to Ferdinand III right here. All right, this guy. He had a sister by the name of Maria Anna von Österreich. And then she had a son named Ferdinand Maria von Bayern, who this guy is. By the time Leopold I is on the throne, that's who this guy is here. That is his first cousin. And they all got powdered wigs. Now, the powdered wig was first invented by Louis XIII of France because he was like going bald. And in 1624, I think it was, when he decided to wear a powdered wig to keep his baldness. He invented the wig, so that's how wigs were invented, kind of. I don't know if the wig itself, at least the powdered wig and the style of it. So 1660s now. This all holds true until 1662, because in 1662, that is when Leopold Wilhelm Habsburg dies. So now this guy here is the heir, Ferdinand Maria. And then he's even got a son right here by the name of Maximilian Emanuel von Bayern. And he was actually just born in 1662. So this guy is like 1 year old at this point. But he is now the heir in 1663. He's the second heir of the Holy Roman Empire. Leopold I is Holy Roman Emperor right now. Until 1678, I want to say. Yeah, 1678, that is when Leopold I actually has a child of his own. This is a female branch. That is a semi-Salic type thing. So that's what that was. So Leopold has his son in 1678 named Joseph. He will later become Holy Roman Emperor Joseph I. And look at the wig on that man. That is good stuff. Sorry the picture's low quality. That sucks, but yeah, wow, look at that wig. So that's 1678. And then by the time we get to 1680 or 1679 actually is when this guy here dies. So then his son Maximilian is now the second heir after Joseph, right here, the son of Leopold I in 1680. So in 1685, Leopold has a second son. This guy's name is going to be Karl. He will later become Karl VI, Holy Roman Emperor. Both of his sons become Holy Roman Emperor because Joseph never has any sons. So Leopold I continues to reign. I don't think anything happens until he dies. So then we get to 1700. But in 1700, actually, Joseph does have a son in 1700. His name is Leopold Joseph Habsburg, but he dies in 1701. There's no painting of him. It's just his burial place, burial site right there. His casket. But so by the time we get to 1702, Karl's back in the line of succession after Joseph, his brother, though. But Joseph does end up having two daughters, but with the semi-Salic law, I don't really allow that. 1705. That is when Leopold I finally dies. He'd been on the throne for quite a freaking long time. Remember, he took the throne back in the 1650s, so Leopold I had been on the throne for quite a while until he eventually dies in 1705. So that's when Leopold I dies. So by the time we get to 1706, Joseph I is now Holy Roman Emperor. Holy Roman Emperor Joseph I. Now, he has a daughter, Maria. Well, I'll let you know that in a sec. But he rules for about 6 years until 1711. 1711 is when he dies. Joseph I doesn't really do much honestly, during his reign, but he looks absolutely epic. My freaking Reese cup wrappers just blew all over the place. Okay, so by the time we get to 1712, that is this guy here. Karl VI is now king. And I screwed up, too, because I had this picture for him. This is actually not Karl VI. This is Maximilian over here, who, again, we showed the relationship. This is Ferdinand III's sister's grandson. So that's how that goes there. They're all Habsburgs, though. They're all Habsburgs. Actually, no, he would be part of the... I guess he is still Habsburg. And then he's got a son named Karl as well. So Karl VI ends up ruling for a little bit. He dies in... I actually have his... In 1717, I actually have his daughter. This is the one and only time you're ever going to see a female on Earth. Freaking flying mosquito. It's the only time you're ever going to see a woman in the line of succession for the Holy Roman Empire, because she actually ended up becoming the empress later down the line. Kind of. But she had an emperor ruling with her. She didn't rule in her own right, but she was able to claim the throne based on being the daughter of Karl VI. Because Karl VI didn't have any other... He didn't ever had any sons. So in 1717, when her name is Maria Theresa, by the way. Maria Theresa was born here in 1717. Maximilian's still kicking here. Although, just keep in reality, if Karl VI were to die in 1717, chances are Maximilian would have gotten the throne. So, just know that. So that brings us into the 1720s. Nothing happens in 1720s because, well, actually, 1726, Maximilian here dies. So now Karl, his son, is actually the second heir now. Now, it's looking pretty good for Karl, because it seems like he's going to become king, or emperor, Holy Roman Emperor, because Karl VI is not going to really have any more sons. So that brings us into the 1730s. He's got 10 years left in him, and he makes it to 1740. 1740 is when Karl VI dies, so immediately following his death, Maria Theresa skipped, of course, because she's a female, but she'll be back. But by 1741, we get Karl VII, or Charles VII. Again, Karl is Charles. He's more commonly known as Charles VII instead of Karl VII, but just because they're German, I'm calling them Karl. I guess they're Austrian, really, at this point, but that's Karl VII. Now, Karl VII actually ended up marrying Joseph I's daughter. If you remember Joseph I, it was this guy. His daughter actually married Karl VII. So that's kind of interesting. So this guy over here is now the true heir. But the reason Maria Theresa is still on here is Maria Theresa actually ends up marrying this guy. And he is from the house of Lorraine. How he's related is if we go all the way back up to Leopold. Let's see. There's famous incest with the Habsburgs that go on in Spain. And that's why the War of the Spanish Succession happens. But if we go all the way back to Ferdinand III, who's the guy that had a lot of sons, Ferdinand III. Okay, Ferdinand III. He had his eldest son, obviously, that took the throne after him was Leopold I. But Leopold I actually had a sister by the name of Mariana of Austria. Now, she married Felipe IV of Spain, and he was also king of Portugal. And then they had a son together who then, he was the last king of Spain and the Habsburgs, but they had another daughter named Eleanor of Austria who married Charles V, the Duke of Lorraine, and then they had a son named Leopold, and then he had a son named Francis. And that is who Karl VII's successor is. But Maria Theresa ends up becoming empress as well. Well, first of all, Karl VII only rules until freaking 1745. That's when he dies. He doesn't rule long. So in 1745, Maria Theresa and Francis I, he becomes Holy Roman Emperor, Francis I, and then she becomes the Holy Roman Empress. Maria Theresa. Now, she actually rules in her own right because remember, she's the daughter of Karl VI. She's Karl VI's daughter, so he created a thing. So Karl VII just had fun for a little bit, and then now we're back to business with Francis. So the House of Habsburg splits into the House of Habsburg-Lorraine, kind of, is what it's called now. So, because he was part of the House of Lorraine, and then she's a Habsburg, but they kept the Habsburg dynasty going, so now Habsburg-Lorraine. So their eldest son is this guy here. His name is good old Joseph. Right there, Joseph. And then he's got another. Then they got another son by the name of. This is Karl Joseph Habsburg. This guy will later become Holy Roman Emperor. This guy will not, and you'll see why. So that all happens until we get to the 1750s. We go to the rest of the 1740s, 1750s, and the 1760s. So in 1761, Karl Joseph Habsburg passes away. So now there is another son. Their other son name's Leopold. He'll become Leopold II, Holy Roman Emperor, and then he'll become Joseph II. So we got Maria Theresa and Francis I. They reign until 1765 when Francis dies. But Maria Theresa actually made it to 1780. But since Francis I died, she's not going to rule anymore. It's really weird how that works. So now Joseph II is now the Holy Roman Emperor. Now we're kind of coming to the close. The Holy Roman Emperor only has 40 years left in existence. So these are the last few Holy Roman Emperors. Joseph II was one of the last ones. But Leopold here is his heir. And then they got an even younger son here named Ferdinand. And that's him right here. Ferdinand Karl Anton Habsburg. Okay. This all holds true until we get to 1768. Because in 1768 is when this guy here, Leopold II, he's not emperor yet, but he will become it. He has a son whose name's Francis. And he will become Francis II. And Francis II right here actually is the last Holy Roman Emperor. So, and he eventually, when that happens in 1806, what happens? So, 1760s happen. Now we're into the 1770s. Nothing happens in the 1770s with the Holy Roman Empire. A lot happens in the 1770s elsewhere, but not in the Holy Roman Empire. So, we get to 1780. That's actually when Maria Theresa actually died. 1780, or I guess 1790. Yeah, 1790. That is when Joseph II dies, leaving the throne to his brother, who becomes Leopold II. We get 3 seconds in a row, I think. We get Joseph II, Leopold II, and Francis II. So Leopold II, his eldest son is Francis, and then Francis believes is probably his brother. And his brother, let's see here. Leopold II is now king. He doesn't rule very long at all, actually. Only rules for 2 years. This is, well, I guess it'd just be Franz in Francis. Franz II, what he was known as. He's got another son named Karl Ludwig Habsburg, who's this guy here. But Leopold II does die in 1792. He didn't rule very long at all. So now Franz II is now Holy Roman Emperor, and he will hold that title until the fall of the Empire. My cat is screaming at the door. Let me go let her in. So the powdered wig era is starting to decrease once we get to like 1830. Once this guy dies, I'll take it off. But I'm just going to leave it on the rest of the video. I ain't taking this off. But 1793, he's now emperor. So this is his son, Franz II's son. He's got his son. His name is Ferdinand. Was it Ferdinand? Yeah, Ferdinand. Right here. Now he doesn't become Holy Roman Emperor, but he does become emperor. You'll see what. Again, like I said, Franz was the last Holy Roman Emperor. Francis the second. Francis II was the last Holy Roman Emperor. And then he's got his brother here, Karl Ludwig. Habsburg. So 1794 until we get to 1790. Wait, when was he born? I guess until we get to 1800, and then we get to 1802. In 1802, yes, photograph. Now, a good thing about this is I'm actually going a straight shot to 2022. I'm not doing a like where I did fake outs with France, where I went back like 3 times. So this is, there's no alternative successions. It's pretty clear who would be the who would be the Holy Roman Emperor today. But this is the second son of Franz. His name is Franz Karl Joseph von Habsburg. And look at that facial hair. That is epic. So, in 1806, this is during the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon Bonaparte has taken over most of Europe at this point. He leads an expedition in 1806 into the Holy Roman Empire and kind of claims it, although he doesn't become the emperor of that area because, I'll tell you what happens here. In 1806, that's when the Holy Roman Empire falls. So this is the end of the Holy Roman Empire, which had been going on since 962. If you remember Otto the Great way back, Franz was the last Holy Roman Emperor. In 1806, Napoleon Bonaparte destroyed the Holy Roman Empire and forced the Emperor Francis II to abdicate. So he abdicated, forced him to abdicate. However, the Habsburgs continued to rule in empire. They continue. I can't even type, man. They continued to rule in the Empire of Austria, the Austrian Empire, with Francis II declared emperor in 1804 to 1807, sometime in that period. So by the time we get to 1807, Francis II is now the emperor of Austria. So the Holy Roman Empire is no longer existent, but it's now the Austrian Empire. So that's kind of cool, and the monarchy still continues, which is cool. Now, this is not alternative history. I'll let you know when we get to alternative history. This is real history. Francis II seriously became emperor of Austria, and then so did Ferdinand over here. So that's pretty cool. So he actually ends up ruling quite a long time, too, until we get to the rest of the early 1800s. I mean, 1810s, 1820s, he's still kicking, 1830s. It's not until 1835 when Francis II actually dies. I remember he took the throne of the Holy Roman Empire back in 1792 when his dad, Leopold II, died. So he had been on the throne, and then he ruled as the first emperor of Austria. Well, I don't know if he was the first emperor of Austria, but he ruled as emperor of Austria for almost 30 years, 29 years. So now the throne is passed to his eldest son, who becomes Ferdinand. Now, he should be Ferdinand IV, you would probably say, because we already previously had Ferdinand, which I agree with you. He probably should be Ferdinand IV, but he's actually known as Ferdinand I because Austria had never had a Ferdinand. But there had previously been 3 Holy Roman Emperors named Ferdinand, but this isn't the Holy Roman Empire anymore now, is it? This is Austria. So he is actually just Ferdinand I again. So that's kind of weird. So there's 2 Ferdinand I, but I'm just going to call him Ferdinand IV because that's just honestly probably what his name is. So this guy is Archduke Karl Franz Habsburg. He's got a son right here whose name is Franz Joseph. Now, Franz Joseph is a pretty famous emperor. He will later become emperor of Austria, and then will eventually turn into Austria-Hungary later down the line. Now, Franz Joseph I rules for a very long time. You'll see, he's one of the longest reigning monarchs in the history of Europe. So this guy, Ferdinand, continues to rule all the way up until 1848, because in 1848 they make a bold decision. Ferdinand and Archduke over here both decide to abdicate the throne because they don't want to be king anymore. So the throne is passed from Ferdinand straight to Franz Joseph with no question. So by the time we get to 1849, Franz Joseph I, he's 19 years old, becomes emperor of Austria. And then eventually that turns into the Empire of Austria-Hungary, where it combines with Hungary to become Austria-Hungary. and they eventually fight, and that lasts until the end of World War I, which you'll see in a second when that happens. But by the time we get to 1849, that's when you have Franz Joseph as king. Now, keep an eye on him and the dates as they go by, because this guy actually ends up ruling for a whopping 68 years. 68 years as king. Which is insane. Or emperor, I guess. Franz Joseph I is what he's known as. He's got 2 names. Now, he's got his brother right here, Ferdinand Maximilian Habsburg. That's who this guy is right here. He is his brother, who's about 2 years younger than him. And then he's even got a third brother by the name of Karl Ludwig. So those are his 2 brothers who are his heirs right now. Now, Franz Joseph I, this all holds true, I think, until we get to, so the 1840s go by, we get to the 1850s. Let me look up when Austria-Hungary was formed, because I don't know when that empire was formed, but Franz Joseph did that. When was... I forgot to mention back, Joseph II's sister, if we go way back, Joseph II, this guy's sister was Marie Antoinette, who married Louis XVI and lost her head in the French Revolution. Let's go back to Franz Joseph real quick. Okay. It was in 1867 when that was founded, so he rules in the 1850s. 1858, he has a son, the Crown Prince Rudolph, who is set to become emperor when Franz Joseph I dies, but he lives a long time and actually ends up outliving Rudolph. But you'll see what happens to Rudolph. It's not natural cause what kills him. He's Crown Prince Rudolph, which jumps Ferdinand here down, Ferdinand Maximilian down to second in line. Now, Franz Joseph I only ended up having 1 son anyway. So, that's how that is. And then he never had any kids either. So now we're into the 1860s. 1867 is when Austria-Hungary, the empire, is formed. Now, Franz Joseph I has been on the throne at this point for about 20 years. And he forms the Empire of Austria-Hungary, which is a combined kingdom, which eventually becomes one of the biggest powers in Europe. Now, the Holy Roman Empire back then had been losing territory for a long time, up to when it fell, because Prussia was a thing. Prussia was the big kingdom that fell out of it, and then Bavaria and Luxembourg and Saxony and stuff. So Austria-Hungary and Prussia were at war with each other a lot. Same thing with France and stuff. The Franco-Prussian War was going on at this point in 1870, I think. So that was what was going on then. So Franz Joseph I is still on the throne. And this all holds true until we get to 18... when does he die? Is 18... Well, Franz Joseph I is still king in the 1870s, and then 1880s, he's still on the throne. Remember, he took the throne in 1848. Been on there for a while. So in 1889, though, his son, Crown Prince Rudolph, actually commits suicide with his wife, I think, in 1889. So he is actually left out of the succession. So now Franz Joseph's kind of screwed because he does not have an heir anymore. So now we get to Franz. This is Ferdinand still by 1890. If you remember back, this guy here, Karl Ludwig, he actually has a son by this point. Karl Ludwig himself is dead by 1890, but he has a son right here named Franz Ferdinand. Now, Franz Ferdinand that name might come to, might be familiar to you. And I'll let you know what happened to him. He's pretty famous in European history and world history because he kind of started a huge conflict. It wasn't him himself, but his assassination in 1914 was kind of a big deal. And you'll see what happens to it. He's the heir to Franz Joseph. Now, this guy actually ends up dying in 1896. So by the time we get to 1897, Franz Joseph's heir is Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand never has any kids, though. But he has a younger brother named Otto, and that's who this guy is here, Otto. So that is Otto. So that's who that is. So now we're into 1900. He's Franz Joseph's still king. So this all holds true until we get to 1907. Because this guy here dies in 1906. But he's got a son in 1907 who is Charles I. Well, I guess Karl VIII. He is the last emperor of Austria before that is dissolved at the end of World War I. So by the time we get to 1914, in 1914, tragic strikes again. Because Franz Ferdinand here is assassinated in Serbia. And it was the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that sparks World War I. World War I first started with the assassination of this man right here. That is what started the First World War. And he dies, and he's dead by 1914. So Franz Ferdinand, he's not kicking by 1915. So now Charles is the heir, and his second heir is a guy named Otto von Habsburg, who does not become emperor, but he is the eldest son of Charles here. Otto von Habsburg. He was born in 1912, and this guy is actually insane. Then we get to 1916 and 1916. Now, if you guys have noticed what's happening, so much has gone down. Franz Joseph's still king. He's been king since 1848. He finally dies in 1916 during World War I. He doesn't die in battle. He just dies of natural cause. He's like 86 years old. He's an old guy. So he dies in 1916. So by the time we get to 1917, Charles finishes out the war for him. This is Otto von Habsburg is now his heir. And then Otto von Habsburg has his brother over here, who is now the second heir. So in 1918, the Treaty of Versailles is signed ending the First World War. And the end of the Austro-Hungarian Empire ends with Charles right here, Karl VIII. So following the Treaty of Versailles, ending the First World War in 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was abolished. Who would be emperor in 2022 is the question. So the line goes on today. The empire was abolished. There was no more empires. So now this is where we depart from actual history and enter alternative history. So we're going to pick up with 1919. So Karl actually made it to 1922. He actually lived 3 years after the end of World War I. So by the time we get to 1922, that is when he actually dies. He only would have ruled for 6 years, which leaves his 10-year-old son as king now, Otto von Habsburg. He's now king in 1923. Emperor, he would have been 1923. Now, if you think Franz Joseph the First, this guy here, you think he reigned a long time. Look, okay, I'll do this in perspective. Look at the dates. Look how long this guy was king. Long time. This guy got nothing. Franz Joseph's got nothing on Otto von Habsburg. He actually ends up ruling longer than Franz Joseph I. Longer than Queen Elizabeth II. And even beating the great Sun King Louis XIV by 17 years. Had Otto von Habsburg become king, and the Austrian and Hungarian Empire was never abolished, he would have become the longest reigning monarch in human history. And you'll see how long he lives. Keep in mind right now, this is 1923 is when he would have became king. Well, he would have became king in 1922. He would have ruled for, I'll tell you how many years when you find out. But he would have become the longest reigning monarch in human history. Had he actually, remember, he wasn't actually a monarch, but if he was, he would have been. Now, these are his two brothers right here. This happens the 1920s, 1930s happen. 1939 is when World War II starts. And Hitler had been born in Austria, actually during the reign of Franz Joseph I, way back in 1889. So that was what's going on here. But we're just saying that the empire Hitler probably would have taken over the Austrian Empire anyway. We're just going to say hypothetically that World War II doesn't happen in this alternative world, and that Otto von Habsburg continues to rule anyway. So 1950s, 1940s, so we get to the end of the 1940s. 1955 is when this guy over here has a son. So this is the nephew of Otto von Habsburg, but he's only there until 1961, because in 1961, Otto von Habsburg has his son, Karl von Habsburg. Oh, yeah, by the way, he would have probably been Otto V of Austria, or Austria-Hungary, depending on if it still would have existed or not. But we'd have to see. And then until 1964, because in 1964 he has his second son right here. And I don't know that guy's name, but he's still alive. Both of these two are still alive. So in 1964, remember, he took the throne in 1922. So he'd already been on the throne for 42 years at this point. And trust me, he's got plenty to go. Plenty. So, this all holds true. So I'm going to go through these slowly. So we get to the end of the 1960s. We're in the 1970s now. Otto hits 50 years on the throne. 60 years. He has to get 69 to beat Franz Joseph, which he will do in 1991. Makes the end of the 1980s. 1991, he beats Franz Joseph. So this guy here, he already ruled longer than him. He already became the longest reigning monarch in Austrian history. 1992, 70 years on the throne. 1993, he has already beaten Queen Elizabeth II. She reigned for 70. 1995, tied with Louis XIV. 1996, beating Louis XIV. There's only one king that would have ruled longer than him at this point. He reigned for 83 years, who is Sobhuza II of Swaziland. But 83 years, he'd have to make it to 2005. Can he do it? In 1997, he has his grandson. This guy's actually a race car driver right now. I forgot his name, but I think it's like, what's his name? I'll look it up. Who is the son of Karl von Habsburg? That's Ferdinand Habsburg. So he is now a race car driver. So Karl von Habsburg is still the heir, and then this guy in 1997. He makes it to 2000. This guy is still king. Marlene, I don't know if you're watching this or not, but your parents have been born and died, and this guy's still king. There have been people by this point that have lived entire lifespans, and this guy is still king. He's currently 88 years old, still kicking at 78 years on the throne. 2002, he hits 80 years on the throne. 80 years. He's 90 years old. He was born in 1912. 2002. 81 years. 82. 83 years on the throne. Tied with Sobhuza II. Can he make it? He beats Sobhuza II. By 2006, he has been on the throne for 84 years and beats Sobhuza II of Swaziland, becoming officially the longest reigning monarch in human history. But he's not done yet. 2007, still king. We're up to 86 years on the throne. 87 years on the throne. 2008. Or I guess that's 80. Well, this would be 85 years. 86 years on the throne. 87 years. He makes it to freaking 2010. He's still alive. 2011. Still alive. But in 2011, after an 89-year reign, not lifespan, 89-year reign. He became king in 1922. 2011, he finally dies, leaving Karl von Habsburg, now the heir. It is now the king in 2012. Become Karl VIII, I guess. And then the race car driver is now his heir, and then we have his brother. And none of them have kids, so this takes us all the way to 2022, where the present day stands. So that is a quick history. Well, not really quick. It took a long time. That is the history of the entire Holy Roman / Austrian Empire. What do you think about Otto von Habsburg? Look at this. Look how long he's been king. Going all the way back. Think about how much time has gone by. Look at this. 1960s, 1950s, 1940s, 1930s, 1920s. He had been king forever. Forever. Actually, he was the second heir to freaking Franz Joseph. I mean, gosh. Oh, I'm going back. But yeah, he was just wow. So if they wouldn't have abolished that monarchy, that would have been insane. But 2022 at the end with Karl von Habsburg. So Karl von Habsburg would be the Holy Roman Emperor today if they had never abolished it. This guy here would be the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, with his heir being Ferdinand over here. So, what do you guys think about all that? Let me know. If this video does well, I'll probably keep doing these. But this was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from making this, and I hope you guys did too, because the Holy Roman Empire is a more lesser-known kingdom than France and England are. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure, let me know who your favorite Holy Roman Emperor was, and if there's anything I got wrong, please correct me if I had any misinformation, which I'm guaranteed there was something probably. But I tried to hit up everything, and that is the entire history of the Holy Roman Empire from 768 to 2022. So I'll give you a little bit of a back. So we'll go through the whole thing right now. Back through time. 1700s, if you remember all these guys. There's the Maximilian, Rudolph. Habsburgs are in the freaking Vittles box and stuff. That's when England took over. Going all the way back, man. We're all the way to the Heinrichs now. You see the date slowly moves over. Now we're into the 900s, the 800s, and the 700s. All the way to 768 with Charlemagne. So now here's the whole empire in speed mode. 900s, 1000s, 1100s, we get the 1200s, then we get the 1300s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and then we get the 2000s. There we go! And that is the entire history of the Holy Roman Empire. Thank you for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye! Wah!